Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 541. The 4 Essential Traits. Those 3 flowers made of dense fog went back into Mei Shuiyan's body with a whoosh sound after a while. Then, Mei Shuiyan gently opened her eyes. Her eyes shot a strange light as she looked at Jun Moxie. Her heart was undulating, and her expressions were very complicated. She seemed to be sending off several mixed indications. However, only one thing was certain. Mei Shuiyan could clearly feel that her primal strength had reached its maximum limits after this momentary effort. It had undergone massive improvements. She had received 50 years' worth of pure primal power, even a little more. Mei Shuiyan had been besieged by the 10 top-notch experts in the past. And she had sustained serious injuries during that incident. She had somehow managed to escape, and had then returned to the Tianfa forest. But it could be said that the condition of her injuries was very critical. Her body had been damaged from the inside out due to that sword injury. Moreover, that sword strike had been a result of some sort of a devious and demonic martial technique. This evil energy had then intertwined with her body. And she hadn't been able to drive this defect out from her body. Mei Shuiyan had been striving to cure this injury for decades. In fact, she had even reverted to her Xian beast form in order to do so. However, she still hadn't been able to recover completely. It must be said that Mei Shuiyan's heart used to be kind and gentle back then. Therefore, she hadn't done her best against those attackers at first. And that's because she had always thought that these men made up the main force which would be used in the battle for seizing the heavens. They were directly related to the safety of the entire mainland. Therefore, it wouldn't be suitable to kill them. And she had suffered very dearly for this reason. In fact, it could be reckoned that even the incense sticks in front of Mei Shuiyan's memorial tablets would have burnt out a long time ago in case she hadn't possessed such dreadful strength. The seriousness of that injury had only been one step short of the ultimate disaster if one were to think from Mei Shuiyan's perspective. Could an ambush from 10 top-notch experts be considered a trivial matter? She had struggled at the gates of hell after that battle. It was on the eve of that battle at Tianfa when Mei Shuiyan had finally felt that she was at the verge of making her recovery. But she had been disturbed during this most critical stage of her recovery. After all, losing the sacred fruit had incited her at a time when she was so close to a successful recovery. Consequently, her primal energy had comprehensively flown in reverse, and her body was instantly reverted to its originally injured state. Then, Jun Moxie had sneaked into her territory at a time when she was incapable of doing anything. He had acted mischievously with her since he had thought that she was just an ordinary small animal. However, this had left Mei Shuiyan so ashamed that she had wanted to die. But she was still helpless. However, Jun Moxie had unknowingly used his heavenly aura to heal her. And this had also played a great therapeutic effect on her injury. This hadn't allowed her to make a complete recovery. But most of her old sufferings had disappeared nonetheless. Even the effect of her primal cheese devil's bite had been reduced to a negligible level. Mei Shuiyan had concentrated her efforts after Jun Moxie had left. And she had managed to regain 80% of her initial strength as a result. Then, she had suppressed her old injuries, and had gone to battle against 4 of the 8 great masters. Then, she had managed to win the battle in one fell swoop. However, Mei Shuiyan had known that her injuries were far from full recovery. Moreover, the battle for seizing the heavens was imminent. But she was uncertain of her own condition at such a crucial time. This was the reason why she had come to the mainland. She had been hoping to find an opportunity to make a complete recovery. Accompanying Jun Moxie had obviously been premeditated on her part. And that's because Jun Moxie's heavenly aura was the best method to treat her injuries. Jun Moxie had certainly insulted her. But she needed Jun Moxie's heavenly aura in order to heal herself. It was a complicated and inexplicably strange relationship. It had been exhausting for Mei Shuayan to toss and turn between these two emotions along that long journey. But Jun Moxie had been having a very pleasant journey at the time. And this had left Mei Shuayan to feel even more unsatisfied. Therefore, she had repeatedly messed with him. However, this guy had constantly managed to deal with everything she threw at him. He wouldn't break down even if couldn't deal with things. The thickness of this guy's skin is unparalleled. He never gets angry. Who in the hell is he? It's true that Mei Shuayan urgently needed Jun Moxie's heavenly aura to heal her injuries. But she was the lord of the Tianfa forest. So, how could she bend her knee and ask him for this favor? She considered this issue for a long time, but couldn't make up her mind. So, she sent the Snake King to recon around the Tianxiang city after they had arrived here. However, Jun Moxie used his extremely rogue ways when they met again. He spanked her. He even kissed her. This obviously left Mei Shuayan feeling like a big mess. Killing him would have been easy, but she couldn't do that. She could beat him up. But she mustn't beat him heavily. And reprimanding was useless against such a shameless guy. Therefore, Mei Shuayan was hesitant to make her choice. However, that's when she heard Jun Moxie invite her to live with the Jun family. And she carelessly agreed to the idea in that moment of muddle-headedness. Consequently, she had been living there till this date. They remained in regular contact for a while. And she didn't even realize how the shadow of this rascal entered her heart one step at a time. Her heart had always been like a serene lake. However, it somehow broke chaos as a result. Her injury still hadn't recovered during her stay here. However, the amazing pill Jun Moxie had given her had astonishingly increased her speed by 3 times. Then, this heavenly vitality pill had added 50 years' worth of pure primal strength to her cultivation. Moreover, her injuries had gradually healed under the efficacy of these 2 divine pills. Consequently, she had restored herself to the peak of her strength from the days gone by. Moreover, she had also been given a chance of moving forward. This couldn't make up for the lack of progress during the years gone by. However, the difference still wasn't huge. In fact, it was needless to talk about making an overall recovery and the shortfall over the years. After all, the Tianfa forest would get enormous strength as long as this youngster continued to provide her with his heavenly accomplishments. In fact, it could be reckoned that the days of Tianfa's glory wouldn't be very far away in that case. However, it would be too embarrassing to ask for this favor. So, how could she do it even if Jun Moxie was willing to agree? This eccentric youngster was someone who had incited feelings of love and hate in her heart. How couldn't this be a mystical feeling? Snake King, Bear King, and Tiger King were still immersed in absorbing the efficacy of the pill. After all, there was a considerable difference between their strength and Mei Shuayan's. Their strength had suddenly increased by 50 years of cultivation. They certainly possessed great strength, but they still needed a lot of time to digest and absorb these pills. Jun Moxie eventually realized that the beautiful Mei was looking at him. In fact, it seemed that she was watching him very attentively. And he couldn't help but feel good about himself. So, he pretended not noticing it. And he allowed her to watch him. After all, I'm very charming. What beauty wouldn't prostrate in front of me? However, Mei Shuayan continued look at him like this for a long time. And young Master Jun was eventually unable to bear it. Therefore, he forced a smile and said, "Why on earth are you looking at me like that? Do you think I'm fascinating to look at? Do you feel that I'm very handsome? Do you feel that I am very stylish, very positive, handsome, and confident? Do you think I'm different? I'm an extraordinary hero who can face the rough winds. But other people feel a little embarrassed if you look at me in this way." Mei Shuayan's muddled train of thoughts finally came to a halt. She then smiled sweetly and said, "Maybe it's not too late to get along with you. After all, I don't even bother myself with anything that you say. However, it's your shamelessness that it makes me feel strange. Don't you feel any embarrassment?" Jun Moxie touched his nose and laughed twice. He then said, "A thick skin makes for a great advantage. Haven't you noticed it? A saint had rightly said once, a sensitive person can't find the desirable amount of food to eat, while a shameless person finds enough. Whether it is eating or drinking or looking for wife, shameless people are always ahead. Sensitive people can only pick up what others leave. And it's boring to pick up other people's leftovers. Anyway, I'm not very good at that. Is it? So, you think that being shameless is the biggest advantage?" Mei Shuayan said in a somewhat ridiculing tone. "It's not everything, but it's not too far. You must have this necessary factor to achieve the final victory, whether you want to enhance your strength, or you want to get rich, or lead a battle between two countries, or become the king. You must know a winner needs to have 4 essential traits to succeed. You can't do without even one of them." Jun Moxie bragged with the courage of his conviction. 4 essential traits. Don't just toss scholarly quotes on me. Explain things clearly. Mei Shuayan's curiously had somehow gotten hooked to his words. There's nothing to do right now, so I might as well let him brag while we pass time. The first major trait being two-faced, kind on the outside, but sinister on the inside. Jun Moxie said in a serious tone, "The chances of your success are very vague if you're not two-faced. This one point is particularly important. This is the trait which gives rise to the countless schemes and plots one requires to formulate. And success can't be achieved without having this trait as a foundation." What is the second thing? Mei Shuayan carefully considered about the issue. And she felt that it wasn't unreasonable to say that. The second trait is daring. You have to dare to do whatever you can dare to think. People's objective can be considered as half successful in the vast majority of cases as long as they can dare to think. After all, you dared even though the others didn't. Therefore, you have more chances of being successful than those others who didn't dare. Jun Moxie's manner of speaking was very similar to that of a scholar from a Confucian school. He even shook his head as if he was teaching with tireless zeal. What is the third point? Mei Shuai thought about it and laughed. Daring? You don't even need to mention this. After all, how many things can a coward achieve? You can be bullied even if you sell vegetables. The third point is extremely important. One must have a fierce heart. Everything depends on a person's heart. One must be prepared to kill mercilessly if someone else tries to hurt their interests. You must be prepared to destroy everything that stands in your way. I would rather suppress the entire world, but I wouldn't let the people's orders suppress me. This is the only way a monarch works. And this has remained constant since eternity. Jun Moxie snorted. He couldn't help but think of Li Yuran as he said this. Li Yuran had faded out of sight ever since Jun family had suddenly emerged as a superpower. There had been no movement on his side even though he was the leader of the Li family's young generation. However, Jun Moxie had never loosened his vigilance. Li Yuran was no longer a threat for Jun Moxie at his current level. In fact, the entire Li family was nothing in front of them at this time. However, that youngster had a very conspiring mind. Moreover, he was full of vigorous ambitions. Therefore, it was still necessary to be prepared against him. After all, he could take advantage of a situation if he wasn't taken care of. I would rather suppress the entire world, but I wouldn't let the people's orders suppress me. Well, those are the words of a tyrant. But it's true as well. What about the fourth point? Mei Shuayan gradually became serious. She had seemingly understood what Jun Moxie had been indicating at. It seems that he isn't just bragging. Do you still want me to state the fourth trait? It is obviously shamelessness. Jun Moxie burst into a loud laughter. Hee hee. How many among these four traits do you think you possess? Mei Shuayan tilted her head and asked. She had an extremely serious expression on her face. The second trait is daring, and the fourth one is shamelessness. I had reached great heights of perfection in these two. In fact, I believe that not many people in this era can beat me when it comes to these 2 points. You could even count the one who can beat me in this regard on your fingers. Jun Moxie obviously feigned a solemn expression as he continued. The first factor is being double-faced. And the third one is a fierce heart. I've half-grasped these aspects. However, my feelings have always been my greatest weakness. Relatives, loved ones, and friends are still hard to part with. Jun Moxie sighed and said, this is the so-called, a doctor can't self-medicate. It's very difficult to change even though I know where my problem lies. Moreover, my heart is fickle in the face emotions. In fact, I might not be able to possess these 4 traits in this lifetime. The transformations still haven't finished. So, this soldier still needs to strive. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 542. Mei Shuayan's Grievances. Mei Shuayan saw that Jun Moxie had evaluated his own self to be short of the desired goal. In fact, he had said that he might never be able to reach there. She hadn't expected him to do this. So, she couldn't help but smile. She then asked him in a perfunctory manner, what do you think of me? You're an insult to my 4 essential traits. You're no better than a fool. Jun Moxie showed no trace of politeness as he replied, you at best possess 1 trait among the 4. That is, you are very daring. But it is merely courage. However, having only courage without the other 3 factors makes you a daring fool in layman terms. You're only capable of blindly charging forward. So, there's nothing good to speak of it. In fact, you're even inferior to those common people who know that they don't possess any of these 4 traits. After all, there's hope that they can spend their lives in safety. However, you can only become a target of people's plots. You will drag yourself into their plots. You will drag your friends into their plots. In fact, you will even lead your entire family to extinction. Mei Shuayan got furious. That's nonsense. Nonsense? You are an intelligent person. So, think this through. Jun Moxie sneered and said, first, let's talk about that time you were ambushed by 10 top-notch great master-level experts. You had sustained serious injuries at that time. You didn't tell me about it even though I had asked. Did you? But I can determine what must have happened. You would have sustained serious injuries. Then, you would have escaped them. And those 10 great masters would have retreated as well. However, you would have only inflicted some minor injuries on them when you had broken out of their siege. You would have made no attempts to cause a life-threatening injury to them. And it's needless to even mention about causing any physical disabilities to them. After all, everything would have been fine in your opinion as long as you could recover from your injuries. Isn't it? Mei Shuayan angrily looked at him as her snow-white teeth unconsciously bit down on her red lips. However, that expression of anger in her eyes slowly turned into one of grief. Isn't this being kind and soft-hearted? Jun Moxie ruthlessly continued to criticize. You would have sustained serious injuries. You would have been brought to verge of death. You would have exhausted your strength. And then, you would have rushed out of their entrapment and fled. Those experts had survived because of your generosity. However, they wouldn't repay your kindness of sparing their lives. Instead, this would have only made them fiercer in their attempts to kill you. Thereupon, you would have returned to Tianfa after that blood-soaking battle. And you would have thought that you managed to make the best of it. Isn't this how that incident happened? Mei Shuayan turned her head in pain. Jun Moxie hadn't seen or heard about that incident. However, he had still managed to guess the sequence of events. But she still couldn't understand their actions. Why? Everyone is going to participate in the battle for seizing the heavens. Everyone will be fighting for the sake of the mainland and its common people. Then, what's the point of this internal strife? Why would someone wish to murder their own ally? Isn't their ultimate goal the same as ours? However, I know that they're determined to fight against the foreign aggression. The security of the mainland is their highest priority. I'm very clear about this point. And that's because these people have remained undaunted by dangers in the face of those foreign enemies. They don't even hesitate to sacrifice their lives. They've fervently spilled their blood on the pillars of heaven's mountains. In fact, the spirit of their heroism still persists in this world. Why? How can they not realize that Xian beasts also understand this reason? Mei Shuayan couldn't believe that they hadn't realized this. But this only made it harder for her to understand the reasons behind their actions. Killing me and eliminating the Tianfa forest will only lead to the loss of one powerful ally in the battle for seizing the heavens. Moreover, they will also lose a great amount of their military strength in doing so. Why do they wish to do this kind of a thing wherein they harm others without even benefiting themselves? Are you still confused? Jun Moxie looked at her with indifference and said, how could they not understand something so obvious? Everyone obviously has the same goal and the same enemy. So, everyone should cooperate with each other with sincerity. What's the point of this internal strife? After all, wouldn't killing one's allies be akin to pleasing the enemy? That's right. Why? I genuinely don't understand this. This question has always confused me. Was my Tianfa forest not the vanguard of the battle for seizing the heavens for thousands of years? Have we ever taken a step back? How many beast kings have been buried on the pillars of heaven's mountains over the course of these thousands of years? Ah! The numbers are untold. I can boldly dare to say that this mainland would have ceased to exist a long time ago if the Tianfa forest hadn't been there to support their trinity. Mei Shuayan's eyes were shooting flames. However, the three holy lands wish to put the Tianfa forest to death now. What is this? Why? You beast kings of Tianfa have a pure character. And we've never been able to attain this greatness in character. However, this advantage of yours is also the greatest chink in your armor. Don't start denying it right away. Answer this question first. The expression in Jun Moxie's eyes softened, but they still continued to sparkle as he said, I don't understand why only 3 holy lands were formed after the first few battles for seizing the heavens. Why were there 3 holy lands and 1 fierce land? Why weren't there 4 holy lands instead? Why only 3 holy lands? Have you ever thought about this? The Tianfa forest was equally vigorous. In fact, it was the side which possessed the maximum strength. So, why wasn't it included in the Holy Lands? Why was it named a fierce land instead? This. Mei Shuayan hesitated. She had never thought about this issue. There had only been 3 holy lands and 1 fierce land since the ancient times. And Mei Shuayan had never thought that it was inappropriate. In fact, she had believed that it was inevitable and correct. After all, the Tianfa forest was a fierce land which no man could dare to offend. This had remained the notion for the last 10,000 years. And no experts from the human world had ever dared to invade this holy land of the Xian beasts. However, she suddenly recalled now that had Jun Moxie mentioned this issue. Right. But why? We are also famous and powerful. So, why are the 3 holy lands called the Holy Lands, but the Tianfa forest is addressed as a fierce land? You, and maybe all the other Xian beasts have overlooked this issue. But it was very important. And that's because this concerned the humankind's pride. Perhaps it can be said that this is the unfathomable mystery of vanity. To put it simply, the Tianfa forest and the 3 holy lands had basically been foreordained to oppose each other from that time itself. Jun Moxie gave a cynical laugh and said, this ridiculous belief has been derived from the psychology of orthodoxy. And that's the reason why this dispute has been given rise to. Orthodoxy. What do you mean? Mei Shuayan slowly retreated 2 steps. Then, she slowly sat down on the chair. You still don't understand this? This so-called orthodoxy means that this mainland is owned by mankind. Therefore, mankind must occupy the position of its leader. The civilization and traditions of this continent must originate from human race. The Xian beasts may be very powerful, but they should only be treated as subordinates of the human race. However, the fact is that your Tianfa forest pushes itself more than anyone else in the battles for seizing the heavens. In fact, no one can deny that the mainland would have fallen to the outsiders if there had been no Tianfa in the first battle for seizing the heavens. This has certainly become a matter of pride for the Tianfa forest. But Jun Moxie's gaze seemingly started to burn as he continued. Most of the people who had participated in these battles for seizing the heavens would have considered this as a disgrace for the human race. And this notion stands true for those who are about to participate in the future battles as well. After all, they've had to rely on the power of a group of beasts to win these battles, to safeguard the life of the human race and their homeland. However, this section of the history will never be erased as long as the Tianfa forest exists. Time will pass, and this knowledge will also be passed down thousands of years. However, this part of the history will disappear if the Tianfa forest ceases to exist. Generations after generations of the human race hadn't been assured of their chances in the battles for seizing the heavens. They had feared that they would lose a major portion of their strength in dealing with the Tianfa forest. And this would have allowed those outsiders to take easy advantage of their internal strife. Therefore, this alliance between the humans and beasts had continued. However, the 3 holy lands are now assured. They believe that their wings have grown big enough. They believe that they will win the battle for seizing the heavens without any problems even if there's no Tian-Fa forest. Therefore, the Tian-Fa forest's tragedy has arrived. People tend to dispose others once they've served their purpose. Humans treat even their own kind in this way. So, is it even worthwhile to mention Yuxian beasts? Plus, it is quite a coincidence that the so-called fierce land is only fierce in name at this time. After all, it lacks the fierceness it once used to possess. This has obviously given them sufficient reason to proceed with this plan. The clenched fist is the ultimate argument in this world. So, don't feel aggrieved. History books are always written by the victors. Jun Moxie used a faintly taunting tone as he said this in a breath. No need to feel aggrieved. Mei Shuayan shook her head in disappointment as she muttered. My Tian-Fa forest's beast kings and lords have been joyously shedding their blood at the pillars of heaven's mountains for generation. This had always been a matter of pride and glory for us. However, I had never thought that your human race would treat it as a tool someday. I shouldn't feel aggrieved. How can you humans be so lowly? And, how can I not feel aggrieved? You genuinely don't need to feel any grievances in this regard. And, that's because the three holy lands will also fade away with the fall of the Tian-Fa forest. So, why should you feel grieved? Jun Moxie sighed. The three holy lands will also fade away. How is that possible? Mei Shuayan was baffled. The reason is very simple. The three holy lands will pay a considerable price for dealing with the Tian-Fa forest even if they are successful in their plan. Therefore, the first possibility is that the three holy lands will be destroyed in the battle for seizing the heavens. Then, the outsiders will occupy the mainland. The three holy lands might still be left with some survivors who could pass on the torch to the future generations. However, they won't be able to persist for long. Consequently, they would eventually vanish in a puff of smoke. Jun Moxie smiled mischievously and continued. The second possibility is that the three holy lands are genuinely very strong. Then, they might win the battle for seizing the heavens. However, the three holy lands will certainly feel very confident in case they win decisively. However, there will be no Tian-Fa by that time. So, they will have no external force to unite them. And, this will automatically give rise to internal strife since they would each look for a world with only one orthodoxy. Therefore, only one of them would remain by the end of this struggle. In fact, I'm certain about this point. After all, this is a basic behavioral pattern of the human race. This is also the inferior nature of the human race. In fact, it would be strange if this didn't happen. This is impossible. The ancestral training of the three holy lands is to work as one so that they can withstand the invasion of the outsiders. So, how can the three holy lands massacre each other if the outsiders haven't been annihilated in their entirety? How could they forget their roots? Who can bear this kind of stigma? The remaining faction could easily lose their motivation since there would be no competition. It is very difficult to support a roof with only one pillar. Wouldn't these people be condemned in history if the outsiders were successful in winning those future battles for seizing the heavens? Mei Shuayan violently shook her head as she spoke to Jun Moxie. It was evident that she wasn't convinced. You saw what they did at the auction. Do you believe that these three holy lands are capable of collaborating with each other? Jun Moxie sneered and spoke. Therefore, I can only say that you're too naive to understand something this complex. And, what about ancestral teachings? Is that even worth a few silvers? No. It's worthless. Haven't you seen the Silver Blizzard City's internal strife? Didn't the Silver Blizzard City have their ancestral teachings? The royal family of Tianxiang had once vowed to my Jun family that they would share the glory and shame alike. They had said that they would never abandon us. But, to what extent was my Jun family allowed to decline? I'm afraid that my Jun family would have perished a long time ago if I hadn't suddenly risen to power in the southern Heaven City. The ancestors of the northern grasslands wolves had said that they would only defend the grasslands properly. They had said that they wouldn't attempt to go south. They had said so 1,000 years ago. But which generation of their royal family hasn't tried to occupy this teeming world of pleasures? Which of their generations hasn't marched their horses south? And what outcomes has it ever yielded? Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 543. Miss May, have I offended you in the past? Ancestral teachings. It was considered as the golden principle hundreds and thousands of years ago when they were written. However, they've become obsolete and cliched with the passage of time. Do you think they can curb the vanity and avaricious desires that exist in people's hearts? They can't. Only a handful of people who follow these ancestral teachings can be considered great and wise. However, the remaining people who follow such long-standing words of wisdom are merely mediocre. And people who possess great wisdom and intelligence are wise and far-sighted in their own merit. Therefore, they rarely mess with these ancestral teachings. And the average people aren't capable of changing anything. Therefore, they have no choice but to submit. However, things change when a generation sees the rise of many ambitious youngsters. After all, these people are smart and talented. These talented people are aware that these golden rules of wisdom are very important. However, they still regard them as words of nonsense. Therefore, they don't follow them. And that's because nobody wants to renounce the glories and pleasures of this world because of this nonsense. Therefore, we can say that a smart and talented man might not possess great wisdom. Jun Moxie spoke in a grim tone. Mei Shuayan feebly hung her head. The faith she had persisted in since her birth had suddenly collapsed. Therefore, she gathered her strength and retorted in a powerless manner. No! That's impossible. This is merely your conjecture. There's no evidence to support whatever you've said. Their attempt to besiege and kill you was also my conjecture. Is that not evidence? The 3 holy lands were openly fighting in the auction. Is that also my guesswork? Is that not evidence? Ning Wuqing is convinced that you are somehow associated to me. Is this also a guess of mine? Isn't this evidence enough for you? The elusive land of immortals and great golden city remained indifferent when they saw that the illusory ocean of blood wouldn't be getting any additional pills. They said nothing when we insulted their counterparts. In fact, they even took pleasures in others' misfortunes. You were present on the scene. You witnessed it with your eyes. You even dealt with them. Is this also a story that I made up? Do you still need more evidence? And don't forget that time at TNFA. The words spoken by Rainstorm and Hurricane Masters had agitated you as well. Or was that a conjecture as well? Do you still need more evidence? These 5 arguments exploded in Mei Shuayan's heart like 5 nuclear bombs. She suddenly became deathly pale as her body shook twice. Big sister, young Master Jun has a point. You should take this into consideration. Otherwise, the Xian beasts of our TNFA would find it difficult to escape regardless of what the outcome is for the humans. We'll certainly drown in this calamity. The Snake King's voice was heard from the side at this time. She had absorbed the miraculous pill's efficacy by now. Big Bear and Earthcracker stood on the side, looks of resentment on their faces. They had obviously heard Jun Moxie's words. Mei Shuayan moved her lips. It seemed that she wanted to say something. But she didn't say it in the end. Instead, she only sighed deeply. The three holy lands have many experts. There's no doubt at that. But I can say for sure that only a few deserve to be compared to you. In fact, I'm certain that 10 above great master level experts can't prevent you from escaping. They can only injure you at best. However, how many of those 10 experts were allowed to return unharmed? Jun Moxie exclaimed. You could have easily killed several of them with the kind of strength you possess. And you could have easily injured the rest of them while running away. Moreover, let's not forget the amazing techniques you've mastered. I even reckon that you could have managed to kill all of them in case you had gone all out without bothering about the consequences. And you still would have had enough strength to retreat. But you didn't. Instead, you ran away and left those 10 people alive. Jun Moxie breathed a deep sigh. They aren't plotting a trap for you because you can't defend yourself. Instead, it is because they're aware that you won't kill them even if they come to assassinate you. This is the reason they're being so bold. You've allowed them to be conniving. You weren't able to achieve anything apart from this. But each successive generation of the Xian Beast Kings have been entrusting the battle for seizing the heavens to their successor. How can I pay no heed to this fact? You humans may not take your ancestral teachings seriously. But we Xian beasts can't do the same. Mei Shuayan took a deep breath as she slowly wrinkled her eyebrows. That's why I said that the purity of you Xian beasts' nature is your biggest strength as well as your biggest weakness. You need to understand one thing very clearly. I'm only telling you this because I want you to care about saving your own life first. And then, you ought to think about saving the entire Tianfa forest. But this doesn't mean that you have to withdraw from the battle for seizing the heavens. Jun Moxie deeply stared at her. You must participate in the battle. You must participate in it even if I tell you not to. But you shouldn't exercise blind tolerance in the face of such threats and provocation. You must kill those who wish to kill you. You must cut those who wish to cut you. And this doesn't mean that we'll fail in the battle for seizing the heavens for sure. However, you'll only fulfill their cherished dream of destroying you and all the Xian beasts in the Tianfa forest in case you allow them to kill you like this. Moreover, they might still not be able to win the battle for seizing the heavens after doing this. How can this be considered the fulfillment of the duty of a beast lord from Tianfa? You need to understand this point clearly. One mistake on your part can lead to the destruction of all the Xian beasts in the Tianfa forest. Will you be able to face your previous beast lord in the netherworld if this happens? Mei Shuayan pondered. Then, two seemingly congealed ons of vitality exploded in her eyes as she slowly said, You're right. I realize it now. I've suffered humiliation in silence this entire time. I've been patient and accommodating. But I guess I've made a mistake in doing so. I was gravely mistaken. I hope you've understood this well this time. Jun Moxie smiled. I guess you ought to keep watch while these two guys digest these vitality linkage pills now. Mei Shuayan smiled and nodded. She was one of the wisest individuals of her generation. However, she was obsessed with winning the battle for seizing the heavens. And this had made her usually firm nature somewhat indecisive and irresolute. However, her issues had been laid out bare at this time. Therefore, she had quickly reverted to the usual decisive and murderous temperament of a beast lord from Tianfa. She then gave 2 divine pills to Big Bear and Earthcracker. And the two of them sat down to circulate their vitality. Mei Shuayan, Snake King, and Jun Xie seemed to be sitting calmly. However, they weren't negligent in the least. Each of them could sense their counterpart's spirit sense spreading out. In fact, it could be reckoned that any movement made within a perimeter of several hundred meters wouldn't go unnoticed by these three. Jun Xie had even gone one step ahead. He had transferred some of his own spiritual aura to assist the two beasts' kings. Mei Shuayan and Snake King had been astonished by Jun Xie again. Jun Xie's speed of progress is astonishing. But he's only a Sky Xian Peak expert. So, how can he possess such a powerful spirit sense? Snake King even compared her own spirit sense with Jun Xie's. However, she only ended up realizing that she was slightly inferior to Jun Xie in this regard. She couldn't help but feel extremely strange. Is he possibly hiding some deep secret? Mei Shuayan was the strongest amongst those present on the scene. Therefore, her spirit sense was also the sharpest and most sensitive. This meant that she could understand Jun Xie's abilities better. She could sense which directions Jun Xie's spirit sense was spreading towards. She could even sense how far it was going. In fact, nothing was able to escape her detection ability. However, the might of Jun Xie's spirit sense hadn't come as the biggest surprise to her. That's because Jun Xie's spirit sense had been keeping a check on the spots which would allow someone the best vantage point to mount a sneak attack. Many of those spots were coincident with the ones Mei Shuayan had been watching. However, he had even taken care of the ones she had overlooked. This would seem easy when talked about. But it takes abundant experience to reach this level. And Mei Shuayan was well aware of this. I've been fighting for a long time. And I've suffered many situations of crisis to achieve this. In fact, I've reached this level of battlefield intelligence after experiencing many vicissitudes in life. But this 17-year-old boy possesses the wisdom and intelligence to be more careful than me? Isn't this extremely strange? Mei Shuayan was still in a state of shock when she heard Jun Xie speak. He had seemingly asked in an absent-minded manner, "Oh, by the way, I haven't been able to figure this out. How did I offend you? You've been playing many devious tricks on me since the start." Mei Shuayan suddenly went dumb. This question didn't fall into the category of difficult to answer. Instead, it fell into the impossible to answer. You've had many opinions about me since the time we first met in the Tianfa forest. Jun Xie's spirit sense was still persisting in the area. In fact, it had remained motionless. However, he had still managed to speak up without a constraint. This left Mei Shuayan and Green Hunter even more startled. And that's because Jun Xie's spirit sense hadn't fluctuated even a little when he had spoken. Even Mei Shuayan could barely display such precise control over her spirit sense. This guy is a freak. They then heard him say, "You seemed to hate me a lot at that time. Even that Li Ju Tian probably suffered because of the anger you felt for me. Then, you had grabbed me. But you didn't kill me. Instead, you spanked my ass. It left my butt swollen for several days. But I still haven't been able to figure out what this matter is about. Is this some kind of a kink of yours?" Mei Shuayan couldn't help a faint smile from blossoming on her face as she recalled their first meeting. But traces of resentment also flitted past her face. It seemed as if she had remembered the time when she had been molested by this youngster in the Tianfa forest. "You messed with me the entire journey from the southern heaven to Tianxiang City. And you spanked my ass even when we met outside Tianxiang City. You didn't kill me. You didn't murder me. You only spanked me. That's weird, isn't it?" Jun Moxie couldn't understand this. What hobby bullshit are you talking about? That was only because you look like someone who needs a spanking. Who wouldn't want to spank you? Mei Shuayan snorted. It was obvious that she didn't wish to discuss this topic. I may have a repulsive countenance, but I could sense that you were holding your strength back while spanking me. I was almost as if you were afraid of breaking my body into pieces. I can understand that you had these divine pills' importance on your mind when we met outside the Tianxiang city. But that wasn't the case when we first met outside Tianfa. So, I genuinely can't figure this out. Jun Moxie frowned as he concluded. Therefore, I eventually figured that I must have offended you. It mustn't have been a small matter either. After all, you can't stand me. In fact, you even wanted to kill me. But you still couldn't kill me. Therefore, this has been confusing me for a while now. What has made our relationship so complicated? Mei Shuayan snorted. But she didn't say anything in reply. She would rather let his mind run wild. Therefore, she closed her cherry lips tightly and didn't say a word. I've never asked this before, Shuayan. But what is your main body's form? The crisis was long over. Therefore, Jun Moxie had again shamelessly gathered the courage to address Mei Shuayan by her nickname. You don't need to know this. Mei Shuayan glanced at him. She then shot a meaningful glance at the Snake King as an indication that she mustn't leak this information. The Snake King replied with a wink. She meant okay. Are you kidding? Mei Shuayan looked at Jun Moxie and thought, won't you find another way to offend me if I told you about my real body? And that would be very shameful for me. So, how will I be able to get along with you in future? Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 544. Elder Sister, I wish to spar with you. Mei Shuayan couldn't help but heat up with impatience as she recalled that scene. Her face was burning hot, and her heart was filled with rage. She felt as if there was a huge hand on her buttocks. And that hand was massaging her buttocks without a care in the world. Let's forget about it since you don't wish to share. It doesn't matter. Jun Moxie sighed. He seemed somewhat bored. It seemed as if he didn't have much to talk about. So, he spoke while attempting to change the topic. Oh, that's right. Allow me to tell you something interesting. I saw this tiny thing the last time when I was in Tianfa forest. He closed his eyes to recall. He spoke while making gestures with his hands. It was long ago, it was a very small thing. Its entire body was snow white, and it had pointed ears. Its nose was pointed and somewhat red. And its black eyes looked like gems. It had fine red hair on top of its head. It was so adorable. Her buttocks were particularly to my liking. And it felt so good to rub it. I remember that I had rubbed it for a long time. It had felt so good. It had seemed that the little thing was suffering from some internal injuries. But I didn't know what kind of a heartless person would do this to such a cute little thing. Please help me and take caring of it when you return. And don't forget to grab that thing for me if you're able to find it. Okay? I want to play with her buttocks every day. It was so much fun. That small thing looked something like Xiao Yi's little white. But his buttocks were a little bigger and better. And it was far cuter too. I had even told it that I would put inside the crotch of my trousers. Ha ha ha. The Snake King clearly heard someone draw a firm but cold breath when Jun Moxie spoke till here. She couldn't prevent herself from looking towards Mei Shuayan in bafflement. Don't tell me that she's this tiny animal. The Snake King hastily lowered her head. However, her mind had spiraled into a shock. Oh my God. He isn't referring to elder sister, is he? I finally understood why elder sister hates Jun Moxie so much. So, this is how he managed to offend her. This is what happened. Oh God, how can this be possible? It's hard to imagine that he rubbed elder sister's buttocks. This is very shocking. Mei Shuayan was extremely angry that this guy had dared to say this out loud. Moreover, he had even asked her to help him in catching that little animal. However, she was most annoyed with the fact that he still remembered what he said at that time. Small thing. You should follow me. I will massage your buttocks every day. And you will like it. Moreover, he had then said that he wanted to stuff that little animal in his pants. However, the most important thing was that the Snake King Mei Shuayan's younger sister had heard this. Mei Shuayan wanted to choke him to death for running his mouth. I'm so furious. Jun Moxie noticed that her face had turned red. So, he couldn't prevent himself from asking out of curiosity. What happened? Why has your face turned red? Is this sudden increase in your strength not suiting you? Someone with your cultivation shouldn't have had a problem, right? Snake King finally couldn't prevent herself from letting out a hee. It seemed that she had forcefully held her laughter from erupting out. Shut up. Mei Shuayan fiercely roared. In fact, it seemed as if she was ready to swallow someone whole. Jun Moxie shrank his neck and obediently stayed mum. I can't bear this. What should I say? He has said what he shouldn't have. He mentioned that topic all over again. And I've now heard everything I didn't wish to. And everyone else has heard it as well. Mei Shuayan's stomach was on the verge of blowing up from excessive rage. Dang this guy. Suddenly, a strange shout was heard as Big Bear abruptly jumped. Big Bear's eyes were opened round, and he had a look of disbelief on his face. Then, he turned and twisted his buttocks at speed which couldn't have been captured with normal eyes. He then burst into laughter and said, "This is wonderful. This medicine is super awesome. My speed of primal energies flow has upgraded very significantly. Is this a dream? Haha. It has increased more than 3 times in one go. Wah ha ha ha. Now, this eldest bear can finally taste the feeling of being invincible and unrivaled in this world. What's that third crane standing in front of me now? I can beat him to a bloody face and a swollen nose now. This eldest bear won't be called third bear after that. In fact, I will become second bear. Ha ha. Big Bear had seen many enhancements in the last half a year. He had first taken a 10 years pill and upgraded his strength once as a result. After that, Jun Moxie had helped him in making a successful breakthrough from his bottleneck. His strength had been stagnant for some time before that moment. However, it had suddenly increased by a very considerable margin. And he had taken a dose of the heavenly vitality pill now. This had given his strength a boost of 50 years. Then, he had taken 1 dose of the vitality linkage pill. And that had increased his speed 3-fold. The Bear King was repeatedly blasting his energy to show his strength. How could he not be bursting with confidence at this time? Old bear. Shut up with your stupidity. Snake King knew that her elder sister wasn't in a good mood. So, she hastily shouted at the Bear King with good intentions. However, it seemed that it was already too late for that. And that's because Mei Shuayan had already turned her head. Moreover, her eyes had frozen at Big Bear's body. Big Bear felt an indescribable urge to retreat in the face of her irresistible strength. However, he then suddenly recalled that his strength had upgraded. It would be better to verify the extent of my progress. I know that I can't match up to Big Sister. But I can hold my own for a while. He couldn't help but feel pleased with himself. So, he smiled and said, "Elder sister, I wish to spar with you." Green Hunter buried her face in her hands. She had covered it completely. People's joys often turn into extreme sorrow when they get dizzy with success. It seems that this wasn't merely applicable to men alone. Even Xian beasts had this tendency. What be considered as stupidity? That was stupid. In fact, it was extremely stupid. This stupid bear seems very pleased with himself. He thinks that he has become tyrannical today. But he will soon suffer the consequences of his actions. Very good. I also wish to spar with you. Let's spar. You rarely take this initiative on your own. So, I must be very careful in sparring with you. Mei Shuai clenched her teeth. She had been holding in a belly full of anger since she didn't have a means to vent it out. However, she had suddenly found herself a sandbag. Moreover, this sandbag had willing showed up. It was as if he had dropped from the heavens. Moreover, it was rough and tough sandbag. She coldly swept her glance over him. Then, she started to walk out of the courtyard. She said as she walked, "Come out. Don't you wish to practice with me?" This poor big bear had barely opened his eyes after absorbing the medicine's efficacy. Therefore, he had no idea as to what had happened in the outside world. Consequently, he thought that this was merely a normal matter. Therefore, he followed Mei Shuai in high spirits when she started to walk out. In fact, he even grinned in joy the entire way. After all, he was still dreaming about the increase in his strength. It must be said that this fourth bear couldn't be blamed for his boldness. He and the third crane had broken through their bottleneck with the help of Jun Moxie's heavenly aura a few months ago. And their strengths had increased substantially as a result. It could be said that they had reached the peak of the Great Master level. In fact, they had only been a step away from reaching the level above that of the Great Masters. Therefore, their strength was far beyond the other Beast Kings. Big Bear's strength had again taken a giant leap since he had digested the Heavenly Vitality Pill and Vitality Linkage Pill today. This meant that third crane, Snake King, and Tiger King were no longer capable of matching up to him. Therefore, it could be said that his strength was already at the top when it came to the Beast Kings of Tian Fa Forest if Mei Shuai wasn't counted. This also meant that Mei Shuai was the only person who could teach him a few things. It was true that Fourth Bear's strength had increased tremendously. But Mei Shuai was still far stronger him. There was no doubt in this regard. In fact, Big Bear still dreaded his elder sister. But his own strength had forged ahead vigorously. Though, it would have been very annoying for him since would have had no way of confirming his limits. This was the reason why he had put this proposal forth. It was a very normal thing to look for an opportunity to learn something after making a breakthrough. But let's assume the Bear King had heard that conversation, or even a small part of it. He would have never dared to provoke Mei Shuai in that case, no matter how gutsy he was. It was a pity that he hadn't heard it. He had committed a sin. And sinners don't live long. Big Bear came out. He then saw that a slim shadow was rushing over with a whoosh sound. The Bear King's strength had increased moments ago. Moreover, his speed had increased by 3 times. Therefore, His present fighting strength was far superior to the one he had commanded in the past. Moreover, he was erupting with energy and enthusiasm as this time. So, he needed a means to release it. His self-confidence had also risen to an unprecedented height. He saw that his elder sister had attacked with a very high speed. But he reacted quickly without flying into a panic. Big Bear knew that he was still no match for his elder sister. But he believed that he could hold his own for a while after this latest enhancement. Though it must be said that Big Bear's calculations were based on the strength Venerable Mei had exhibited in that battle with the four great masters outside the Tianfa forest. However, Big Bear wasn't the only one who had taken these pills. The other party had done so as well. Moreover, the other party had seen a much better result when it came to the matter of strength enhancement. The gap in their strengths had been rather huge at first. However, this gap had widened by now. Thus, a tragedy befell this old bear. Bear King believed that his speed had undergone a substantial enhancement. This attack wasn't slow, but he felt that would be able to dodge it by using his current speed. However, he wasn't able to foresee that abnormal pain which suddenly arose in his back. It was evident that his back had endured a fierce kick. He staggered a few steps while attempting to turn around. However, he suddenly experienced a sharp pain in his buttocks. The irresistible force of that attack left his body to rotate in circles. Bang 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 sounds continued to arise. It sounded as if someone was beating a leather bag into shape. Big Bear rolled out like a ball. It seemed as if a gust of wind had sent a gold ingot to roll in the ground. He continued to tumble on for a while, and eventually came to a stop. He thought, "Didn't we agree to spar? Why am I being beaten up like this? I wasn't even given a chance to attack. Is this what sparring looks like? Why does it feel like I've become someone's punching bag? I've made a decent progress. But why does it feel like elder sister's strength has seen a much greater enhancement? Oh God, how long is this old bear going to get thrown around for? Don't tell me that I ran myself into the door again." He was about to open his mouth with the intention of begging for mercy. But he suddenly felt that a heavy foot had slammed onto his chin. Big Bear was sent somersaulting backwards as a result. And he fell to the ground thereafter. In fact, it would be more appropriate to say that he had slammed onto the ground. It was evident that it was hard for him to lift his neck at this time. He resembled a huge tortoise as he tried to stretch his neck to speak something. Then, his eyes were greeted with a series of punches. And he was suddenly left looking like a panda instead of a bear. Any man lying prone on the ground would quickly flip over if he were being beat up. However, Big Bear's head had gotten so dizzy that he couldn't even do that. So, he merely shouted, "Elder sister, spare my life. I won't act recklessly again. Don't do this to your little bear." "You won't act recklessly again? You think that you can do that? Don't you wish to be the eldest bear? Don't you want to be?" Mei Shuayan showed him no mercy. She rushed like a sudden gust of wind, and started to rain kicks and punches with pop 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 sounds. Every punch and every kick was mixed with an irresistible force. Meanwhile, Big Bear had been reduced to screaming and grumbling. "Why is this happening? Why is this happening? I never said that I wanted to be eldest bear. I can only be the second bear at best. Do you want me to become the little bear instead? Why is this happening?" The Snake King looked at him with sympathy. "I had told you to shut up. But you didn't listen. Then you volunteered to take a beating. So why are you so confused now?" Earthcracker awakened from a shock and sunk into a new one the next instant. In fact, his eyeballs nearly popped out as he watched Big Bear receiving a violent beating. Will someone tell me what's going on? Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 545. Enhancing Strength. The Bear King's screams were earth-shattering. It seemed as if he was being thrashed rather heavily. He eventually found a chance to run away after several attempts. Consequently, he quickly broke into a run in a confused and disoriented state of mind. Ah! This woman is going to kill me. A loud and sudden voice was heard from his background. World Cage. The Bear King was in the midst of attempting to elope. Therefore, one of his feet was in the front, while the other was at the back in a running-like posture. However, this sudden call froze him in this posture. And he was only left capable of turning his eyeballs as a result. There was an expression of remorse across his entire face. A foot charged towards him like a tornado, and his body was again struck with a series of heavy blows. Jun Moxie's eyes popped out as he witnessed this scene, while the corners of his mouth had been left to twitch. It seems as if Mei Shuayan had been very merciful while beating up by buttocks. It's a tough one to have such a wife. Won't she use me as her punching bag whenever she's mad at me? Oh my God. One mustn't provoke her if they don't have the strength to deal with her. After all, one will have to deal with her destructive blows if they aren't careful around her. However, his tongue had still stuck out in admiration. Bear King truly deserves his title. His thick bear skin is truly very resistant. His skin is like steel. Mei Shuayan finally came to a stop after another series of explosive hits. Then, she stood up in a grand and noble posture. She gently supported her skirt and began to walk towards her room with a smile on her face. Her present attitude and posture resembled that of a woman who hailed from an aristocratic background. In fact, it appeared as if a fairy had returned from a walk in the moonlight. Who could have imagined that this fairy-like creature had orchestrated a scene of abuse and violence a moment ago? The Bear King was trying to control his tears in the background. His face had turned purple and blue. And his head looked more like that of a swine bear now. He lay flat on his stomach and was constantly grieving. He had been rendered speechless and sad. He felt extremely wronged. He was mumbling his grievances while gazing at the deep blue sky. What did I do to attract this disaster? My strength saw an enhancement a short while ago. So, I just wanted to show it off. Could I be considered guilty because of that? And guilty enough to deserve such a punishment at that? Mei Shuayan entered the room while patting her hands. Then, she asked Earthcracker with a smile on her face, Old Ninth, how do you feel? Your strength has enhanced too, right? Do you also believe that you've become invincible? You also feel that you're on top of the world? It must be wrong of me to be calling you Old Nine now, right? No, 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 no. Earthcracker nodded his head like rattledrum. He lowered his head and spoke up with a smile of flattery. I'm a tiny ant in front of Big Sister. You've been practicing for such a long time. Aren't you tired? I can give you a good massage if you're tired. I'll use my enhanced strengths to ensure that Big Sister is satisfied with my massage. Oh. That's not needed, Earthcracker. It would make you look stupid. Besides, you're far more intelligent than the Bear King. Mei Shuayan took the cup of tea which the Snake King handed over. Then, she gradually took a sip from it and lifted her eyelids. Oh. You're too kind. It's all because of Big Sister's teachings. The credit goes to Big Sister. Earthcracker nodded his head and smiled. What's your opinion about Old Fourth? Do you think I'm too harsh on my own brothers? Mei Shuayan glanced at him. Earthcracker suddenly stuck out his chest. He feigned a grave expression on his face. And his entire body took on an awe-inspiring posture. How could he do this? Fourth Bear overestimated his capabilities after making a small breakthrough. In fact, he went so far that he even dared to offend the big sister. This is unbearable. I feel like hitting him every time I see his face. I was somewhat late since I just ended my meditation. Else, I would have been the one to punch him instead of big sister. And I would have been much harsher on him. He's always been a maverick. He pays no attention to social etiquettes. So, I believe that big sister was too lenient and generous towards him. In fact, I personally feel that the big sister shouldn't have been this lenient. After all, people like this big bear can instigate others into being disobedient as well. So, they mustn't be shown any mercy. Moreover, I suggest that the eldest sister should send this big bear into detention once we reach Tianfa. He should be hung upside down with his tail tied to a bamboo tree. This would be a huge warning to the others. Green Hunter and Jun Moxie were thunderstruck by this. So, they could only gaze at Earthcracker with a stupefied expression. What nonsense is he spewing? I've never seen anyone indulging in bootlickery with so much enthusiasm. In fact, this Earthcracker has even managed to say that she was being lenient. The two of them had been struck dumb by this. Let's say that a thief is caught stealing something by a group of 100 people. So, they beat him up for his crime. However, even such a thief would feel like he was treated with mercy if he were to see the misery of Big Bear's condition. And Earthcracker thinks that Big Bear was dealt with mercy? This Earthcracker has cracked past all known records on Earth. He's genuinely worthy of his name. Mei Shuayan nodded her head with a huge smile on her face. She felt extremely gratified to hear Earthcracker's words. Well said. I didn't expect that you would have such great knowledge and insights. Old Ninth. Oh. That's not true. The credit goes to the big sister. Earthcracker shot a furtive glance at Bear King. He couldn't help but open his mouth wide. He then revealed a faint schadenfreude smile. However, he also breathed a sigh of relief in the secrecy of his heart. I've finally crossed this hurdle. Forgive me, Brother Bear. This tiger isn't as tyrannical as you. I would have died a very miserable death if I had been in your position. I got lucky that Big Sister vented out her anger on you. Therefore, her wrath didn't shift on me. Fourth Brother Bear, you must know that you courted your own death in an attempt to broaden your horizons. But I played safe. Wasn't that extremely wise and far-sighted of me? This is how this younger brother of yours managed to avoid this calamity. Earthcracker, you shameless little beast. You wait for me. Bear King's grief-stricken yell rang out in the courtyard. It seemed that his liver had already started to bleed from restraining his tears. He slammed the ground with his hands and his head. His anger had reached its limits. It was obvious that he had lost his mind. After all, it had been sprayed out on the floor because of the beating. Jun Moxie's eyebrows started to bounce in a crazed manner. Indeed, Tianfa's method of teaching manners is very different from anyone else's. Mei Shuayan intentionally or unintentionally looked at Jun Moxie once she was done with these two beast kings. Her glance had clearly indicated that this had been intended as a display of strength. I will sort you out like these two if you dare to provoke me again. I would be extremely happy to vent my anger at you if you attempt to use money to bring these two under your control. I genuinely wouldn't mind that. Jun Moxie flashed a grin. It seemed as if he didn't care. His eyes smugly fixated at Mei Shuyan's face at first. Then, they slowly wandered down to her lofty and silky chest. Then, he flashed a mischievous smile. And, he further moved his eyes over her entire body until they had landed on Mei Shuyan's buttocks. His gaze stayed there for a while. Then, he slowly raised his eyes and gazed at her face with a smile. His expression was clearly stating, "Don't you think that you're bragging a bit too much with this talk of being able to control me? Anyway, you ought to know that I have many means of brining you under my control." Mei Shuyan noticed that his eyes were wandering over her entire body. However, she felt as if two invisible hands were moving over her body. She couldn't help but bite her lip. Then, she shot a firm glance at Jun Moxie and spoke. "It's almost done now, right? These two are done with the process of enhancing their strengths. Their strengths have reached a level higher than the Great Master level. They can even defeat the Rainstorm and Hurricane Great Masters now. Even someone like Ning Wuqing wouldn't be able to stop them from running away if you were to bring a team of 3 to 4 experts. Their strengths have enhanced by leaps and bounds. There's no doubt in that. However, it's still not enough for them to start a journey back to Tianfa." Jun Moxie shook his head. They need some time to adapt to their new speed and strength. After all, their enhancement has been very sudden. Therefore, they'll end up throwing away if they take part in a grave battle so early. So, it's better for them to stay here until they've adapted to the enhancements. Tiger King should particularly be made to stay here. After all, his strength was far lower than that of the Bear King at first. And his strength has been increased using a pill that's new to him. So, there will be adverse results if he's unable to master his newfound abilities. Mei Shuyan nodded. "I think it's reasonable for them to stay for a few more days. Moreover, I'll use this time to ask my master to make a detailed list of the herbs we need. And they can take that list back with them. And you can order them to only carry the herbs we need the next time they journey north from the southern heaven. After all, we got many herbs in this batch. But many of them aren't very useful to us. We can't be sloppy in this matter. We should treat this as our top priority." Mei Shuyan spoke up with a grave expression on her face. "You need not worry about the herbs. Our Xian beasts will take this up on priority. We won't hesitate in providing you with all the important ingredients required for the pills. In fact, it doesn't even matter if those ingredients aren't found in the Tianfa forest. We'll come up with means to get them for you if they exist on this planet. You needn't go to such extremes. I only wanted to show you the true faces of the 3 holy lands. But this doesn't mean that your Xian beasts need to stand opposed to the entire human race. Moreover, these two will likely be able to escape in case they run into an ambush on their way back this time. But that's only because the 3 holy lands wouldn't have estimated their strength properly. However, the 3 holy lands will have a much better idea when they'll be coming to deliver the herbs again. And these two won't be able to deal with the matter since the 3 holy lands will send increased strength after them. However, the Crane King can fly. So, it would be the safest to have him carry the herbs with him." Jun Moxie suddenly remembered this point. So, he added it as well. "I've also thought about this point. After all, we will beat them this time since we'll catch them by surprise. However, we wouldn't be allowed to have our way so smoothly the next time. Therefore, it would be much safer to let Third Crane carry the herbs in the air. It would be a lot safer, but the amount he can carry with him would be lesser. But the time taken for him to make a round trip would be. Mei Shuayan spoke. The whining big bear crawled up his ass while rubbing it. Then, he slowly limped into the inner area. He appeared like an obedient and submissive lamb at this time. Also, we have these 10 pills as well. Each person has to take 1 pill. The 4 of you can take the medicine right away. However, there's no need to absorb the efficacy of this pill. Jun Moxie flipped his hand, and a jade bottle appeared in his palm. There's no need to absorb these pills. What kind of strange pills are these? Mei Shuayan's eyes lit up along with her 3 companions. These are called the Vitality Congregation pills. Jun Moxie said with a smile on his face. The pills can't increase the strength, nor do they enhance one's speed. That is why there's no need to absorb them. Then, how are they useful? Earthcracker opened his eyes wide out of curiosity. There's only one effect of these pills: it gathers the spiritual aura of the world. Consequently, it increases your growth rate by 3 times when you're practicing. In other words, your practice of 1 year will amount to a growth of 3 years after you've taken a Vitality Congregation pill. Jun Moxie winked wittily with a smile on his face. The 4 individuals inhaled a long sigh in unison. Another type of unnatural pill. Mei Shuayan's face reddened as she gently took the jade bottle. She then glanced at Jun Moxie's face and spoke softly. Then, I shouldn't say thank you. She had taken such a precious thing from someone. But, she had said that she wouldn't say a thank you. What did this mean? Indeed, we are a family. So, you don't need to be formal by saying things like thank you. After all, I'm not an outsider. Jun Moxie burst into hearty laughter. Mei Shuayan's face reddened once again. She took out 4 pills, and the 4 of them hurriedly took 1 each. Big Bear's teeth had already been broken. Therefore, cold air was passing through his mouth with hissing sounds. His entire body was in pain as he hurriedly swallowed the pill down his belly. However, he still managed to take out the time to say a few idle words. That's obvious. Big sister and brother-in-law are husband and wife. So, what's the need for saying thanks? After all, they'll be sleeping in the same bed and squeezing into the same blanket in the future. World Cage, a loud shout was heard. It seemed as if someone had been sent flying into rage due to excessive shame. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 546. Grand Ceremony. Bang! Big Bear shouted in an uncanny sound as he was sent flying like a rocket. He then crashed into the chair he had originally been sitting on. It must be mentioned that he had been trapped in the world cage when he was kicked out. Therefore, he hadn't had any means to offload the momentum of his fall. Consequently, his fall was rather severe, and he was left to feel dizzy. Mei Shuayan's face had turned red, and her eyes were radiating with the splendor of anger. This guy genuinely doesn't know how to talk. What's the difference between sleeping in the same bed and getting into the same blankets? Isn't this nonsense? It would be weird if elder sister and brother-in-law didn't get into same bed. Ah! Earthcracker had started to stroke his whiskers while rejoicing in Big Bear's misfortune. His mouth was still filled with the balmy fragrance of the pill. He had been shaking his head whilst thinking that he was still succeeding in flattering his elder sister. In fact, his expressions made it seem like he was very pleased with himself. However, he hadn't realized that his flattery hadn't deviated very far from what had gotten Big Bear a beating. It could be said that Big Bear had failed in buttering his elder sister. And he had received a kickback from the horse instead. However, Earthcracker had tried to add oil to the fire. But his attempt had instead attracted the raging fire onto his own body. Therefore, his "have the old bear beaten up to save the old tiger" policy failed this time. And the two brothers ended up in the same place as a result. You also get lost. World Cage. Mei Shuayan was extremely agitated. Bang bang. Earthcracker let out a miserable shriek as his throat was half-chocked from the back. His limbs seemingly started to dance as he was sent flying in the air. He soared into the clouds whilst riding on the mist. His head knocked against the elegant fragrance courtyard's door. However, he knocked down the gate and continued to fly outwards. Then, he eventually knocked against the opposite wall and bounced back. His mind had spiraled into a state of confusion, and he felt as if he was seeing stars in front of his eyes. In fact, he felt as if he was seeing the entire galaxy. He shook his head in confusion as he fell headlong on ground. It must be said that his condition was far worse than Big Bear's. Mei Shuayan furiously brushed her sleeves and returned to her room. Jun Moxie touched his nose. I can't take any more advantages since I have no excuse. Plus, this isn't looking good right now. After all, there's a chance that this world cage will fall on my head next. Therefore, he decided to leave. The Snake King watched Jun Moxie's back profile as he walked away. The expressions in her eyes underwent a minute fluctuation as she let out a soft sigh. There was a faint hint of sadness in her sigh. The Jun family finally held the grand adoption ceremony 2 days later. It must be said that they had been preparing for this ceremony for a while now. The ceremony meant for adopting a daughter wasn't something one would invite so many people over on normal days. Moreover, it wasn't even old man Jun Xie who was adopting a daughter. Instead, it was Jun Wuyi. Therefore, such a great fanfare seemed somewhat strange. However, Guan Qinghan's status had become very sensitive in the society. Moreover, the chaos caused by those rotten scholars had made things worse. Therefore, these events had led the Jun family to conduct this adoption ceremony at a scale which could be considered at par with the founding ceremony of a country. It could be said that these many influential people hadn't arrived even when Tianxiang was founded as a country. The emperor and empress came from the royal family's side. Even the 3 princes and the princess also arrived in person to congratulate the Jun family. The lords of every powerful family in the capital had also arrived for this ceremony. Numerous officials and officers had also arrived from all over the country. Moreover, various influential Xian families also showed up. Situ family, Sikong family, Bailey family, Duanmu family. The master of ceremonies gradually announced the names of these famous personalities. And the people in the crowd could only exclaim. It must be mentioned that these people weren't celebrated officials in the secular world. But all of them were renowned and legendary personalities nonetheless. Moreover, these people had showed up from all over the country for something as trivial as an adoption ceremony wherein Jun family's Jun Wuyi was accepting a daughter. What did this mean? And what did this indicate? Suddenly, there was uproar in the crowd. Master Feng Wanyun has arrived here to congratulate the 3rd General Jun for adopting the young Lady Guan as his daughter. Song Shang had been entrusted role of the Master of Ceremonies. He was a Sky Xian Peak expert. However, his usually calm voice had somewhat shivered as he announced this. After all, Feng Wanyun was a legendary man. Moreover, he had been newly appointed as the 8th Great Master. However, even he had arrived here in person. The hall suddenly fell silent. everyone in the crowd saw that a man dressed in black robes walked in. He looked like an unsheathed sharp sword, and he had a cold and detached expression on his face. His face was outlined with smooth and strong lines, and his gaze was as sharp as a knife. In fact, people felt as if a sharp sword was piercing them even if he merely gazed towards their direction. Feng Wanyun. Jun Xie was pleasantly surprised by this. And he personally came out to welcome him. The words that Feng Wanyun had spoken to him on that day when he was in a desperate situation were still ringing in his ears. Jun Xie. We will drink wine and talk freely if you survive this day. I Feng Wanyun see your tragedy and helplessness. I wish good fortune to the Jun family for the days to come. But I must bid my goodbye for now. These were the most touching words that Jun Xie had heard before the battle. 3rd General Jun. This Feng Wanyun took the liberty to pay a visit to drink a glass of wine with you. I hope 3rd General Jun won't mind me. Feng Wanyun flashed a rarely seen warm smile when he saw Jun Xie. You are flattering me. This Xie is immensely grateful. Please. Please. He. Why are you calling me 3rd General Jun? There's no need for that. Please call me by my name. Jun Xie replied in an enthusiastic manner. He held Feng Wanyun's hands as he welcomed the man into the hall. All the families had stepped forward to extend their greeting to Feng Wanyun. His name was at the last spot amongst the ranking of the 8 great masters. However, no swordsman apart from the cold-blooded great master Lei Wubei could dare to provoke him. In fact, anyone doing so could only be considered as suicidal. It was nearly impossible to contend against this man. Feng Wanyun merely nodded at them as he walked past. However, he didn't even reply to the family lords of these noble families. Everyone forced a smile in dejection. But everyone was aware of Feng Wanyun's temperament and prideful nature. Great Master Li Ju Tian had been unrivaled when they had gathered for the battle outside the Tian Fa forest. No one present had the capability of matching his strength. However, Feng Wanyun had still dared to unsheath his sword. In fact, he had nearly killed Li Ju Tian's only son. That boy was the only heir to one of the most powerful factions in the world. Moreover, he was the son of one of the most powerful great masters. So, where do we stand in the eyes of a man like Feng Wanyun? Besides, everyone had already gotten a few shocks when they had arrived at Jun family's function this time. It must be said that the Jun family wasn't regarded as a very powerful family in itself. However, they had the solitary falcon to keep a watch over them. Therefore, nobody had dared to look down on them. Moreover, these people had soon realized that Jun Zhantian and Jun Xie had been hiding some crucial information. After all, this father and son duo had ascended to the spirit Xian level. This news had been enough to shock these people. The Tianxiang Empire had never had a spirit Xian expert in its court. However, it had suddenly seen the emergence of 2 spirit Xian experts. Moreover, both of them belonged to the same family. Most importantly, they hailed from a divine military family. It must be mentioned that the Jun family hadn't been in the limelight over the past few years. However, people had still been collecting detailed information on them the entire time. After all, the Jun family was still the top military family of Tianxiang. Their information sources had stated that Jun Zhantian was at the Sky Xian level. So, how had he suddenly become a spirit Xian expert? They knew that Jun Xie had shown unexpected promotion in his strength in the past as well. After all, he had managed to become a Sky Xian expert even when he was handicapped. But how had he suddenly become a spirit Xian expert? Moreover, his disability had also been cured. Everything about these matters had been sudden, mysterious, and unfathomable. Haha. Feng Wanyun. You finally arrived here. Old boy. I've been looking forward to meeting you for a long time. And you finally showed. Let's go to the backyard and play around later on. Maybe you'll still gain some benefits from it. A complacent solitary falcon walked out with a burst of laughter. His body language made it seem as if he was hoping for a fight. Jun Xie had taken the heavenly vitality pill a few days ago. And his strength had successfully promoted to the spirit Xian level as a result. Then, the three men had taken the vitality congregation pill at the same time. Moreover, Jun Xie had also taken a vitality linkage pill. Consequently, the three men had seen an enormous advancement in their respective strengths. This wasn't a trivial progress either. In fact, it would have been outrageous if their strength hadn't advanced after this. Solitary Falcon had been feeling very happy of late. After all, he had never imagined that his strength would increase so drastically in less than a year because he had contracted his services to the Jun family over a bet. He had made great progress in his martial techniques. Moreover, his speed had also increased to an unimaginable level. His strength had improved by at least 2 levels. In fact, even the unattainable levels which hovered above the Great Master realm seemed somewhat within his reach now. Therefore, Solitary Falcon had been feeling as if he was living a dream of late. Getting no money at the end of a day's labor is like wearing a nice dress to parade in the dark of the night. His strength had seen a massive enhancement of late. So, wouldn't he feel like he had out on a beautiful dress to parade in the dark of the night if he didn't get to flaunt it to his age-old rival? It would have genuinely spoilt his fun. However, the greatest rival of his life, Feng Wanyun, had suddenly arrived. Therefore, this was like a heaven-sent gift as far as Solitary Falcon was concerned. Feng Wanyun stared at Solitary Falcon for a long time. Then, there was a sudden burst of astonishment in his eyes. Solitary Falcon's Xian strength had always been excellent. And his techniques had also been great. But Solitary Falcon's overall strength had still been nearly at par with him. This guy had beaten him outside Tian Fa Forest a few months ago after using a very strange technique. However, Feng Wanyun hadn't been convinced with his defeat. In fact, Feng Wanyun had eventually grasped the chink in that technique after some contemplation. Therefore, he had also harbored some intent of challenging Solitary Falcon when he had decided to visit the Jun family. However, Feng Wanyun suddenly discovered that this abominable Solitary Falcon's strength had reached new heights when they came face to face. In fact, Solitary Falcon was giving him a strong sense of oppression even though he was merely standing there. Even the incorporeal air around his body felt somewhat thicker. Feng Wanyun was very familiar with this kind of feeling. This feeling of having your hands and feet tied together only arises when you are facing an opponent you can't match up to. Am I genuinely that far behind him? But this man is the Solitary Falcon. How is it possible? Even the Master of Life and Death Shi Chang Xiao and cold-blooded Master Lei Wu Bei don't leave me feeling such a strong sense of frustration. How did Solitary Falcon achieve this enormous increase of strength in such a brief period? Has he already surpassed Shi Chang Xiao? It seems like he's close to Li Ju Tian's level. Feng Wanyun revealed a bitter smile for a while. He stared at the Solitary Falcon without even blinking. Then, he eventually let out a sigh of relief and said, "Only ignorant don't understand things. We don't need to fight. I'm not your opponent anymore. So, it doesn't make any sense to fight." Solitary Falcon felt very disheartened. Solitary Falcon had fought with the Tiger King after the latter's strength enhancement last night. The solitary falcon had superficially gained an upper hand because of his clever techniques. But he knew that he had fallen short in reality. The Tiger King's skin was extremely rough, and his flesh was inhumanly thick. Therefore, it had been useless to strike his body since it had done no harm to the Beast King. In fact, the solitary falcon's muscles had been hurting the entire night from the excessive strain. Solitary Falcon knew that he would have fallen short if they had gone for a second round. In fact, he reckoned that he would have died at the hands of the Tiger King in case they had fought a desperate battle of life and death. And this had obviously left him very depressed. However, he had finally bumped into Feng Wanyun at this time. Therefore, he had thought of giving vent to his frustration. However, this guy had straight away smashed his hopes. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 547. The Jun family's reputation. But I'm very interested in knowing something. How did you upgrade your strength? Feng Wanyun gazed at him without blinking. He was martial arts maniac. So, the various methods of upgrading strengths were of utmost importance to him. I've consumed a magic pill. Solitary Falcon groaned as he replied. It seemed as if he was harboring a bellyful of frustration. I've told him the truth. But will he even believe me? I believe you. Feng Wanyun solemnly replied in an authentic tone. How could he have upgraded his strength so speedily without the help of some mysterious pill? Solitary Falcon was left dumbfounded by this. This guy is very clever. The two great masters entered the back lounge of the hall. However, the other guests were bustling with excitement inside the hall. They turned their eyes to look at Jun Xie and his son. However, the expressions in their eyes were entirely different at this time. How great is their reputation? One great master is watching over their house. And another great master has arrived here to congratulate them. Song Shang's trembling voice was heard again at this time. The great master of life and death Shi Chang Xiao has arrived to congratulate 3rd General Jun on adopting a daughter. He has also brought a jade rui to express that he wishes good fortunes. Boom! Another surprising turn of events. The other guests looked no different from chicken which had been scared witless by a clap of thunder. They were looking on in daze, and had no idea as to what they were supposed to say. Great Master Shi Chang Xiao walked in with a broad smile on his face. Jun Xie personally greeted him inside the hall in an affable manner. It must be said that old man Jun had been calm and unflustered throughout his life. However, he couldn't help but feel somewhat proud at this moment. Who has such a reputation in the entire empire? Old man Jun suddenly felt as if this was the brightest day of his entire life. Moreover, all of this is happening because of my grandson. What more could a man want if he has such a grandson? Therefore, old man was feeling somewhat smug. In fact, the smile on his face had already stretched beyond his ears. Then, suddenly, cold-blooded Great Master Lei Wubei has come to congratulate 3rd General Jun on this momentous occasion of adopting a daughter. He has presented a precious sword as a gift. Song Shang's lips stuttered and his eyes nearly jolted out. I hadn't expected this cold-blooded madman would also show up. Moreover, he has also brought a gift. There was pin-drop silence in the hall. Everyone present in the hall had started finding this increasingly difficult to believe. Has this world lost its mind? Is it possible that the 8 great masters have arrived here to attend a meeting? Why are these people arriving one after the other? 4 of them have already arrived by now. This is the Jun family's reputation. Feck. And Those rotten scholars had thought that they could bring down this family. Did they even know what they were messing with? They only had a little bit of strength. And they wanted to take on this family? They were blind. They brought that disaster upon themselves. Everyone had suddenly started to look at the Jun family's members with expressions of awe and respect in their eyes. The volume of their internal discussions had suddenly changed to whispers. It seemed as if they were scared that speaking in a loud voice might provoke those 4 deadly great masters who were seated therein. That would be terrible. Each of these 4 great masters can deal with an ordinary influential family with ease. In fact, they can kill one off in no time. The emperor was seated in the first row of the main hall. However, his expressions had suddenly become very complex. The heads of every big-shot noble family had been given seats of importance. And the same was true for the people from the influential Xian families. In fact, they had been left with no scope of making a complaint. However, everyone still had serious and complicated expressions in their eyes. It was hard to tell what they were thinking about. The emperor faintly sighed after a while. Then, he said, "It turns out that the Jun family has a great reputation. It makes us somewhat envious." He had clearly spoken this in a joking tone. And everyone had laughed out with him. However, everyone evidently knew one thing in their hearts. His Majesty didn't mean these words as a joke. A great master is the kind of personality even an emperor will have a hard time in inviting over. In fact, even an emperor might not succeed in inviting one over. So, having 4 of them over for a celebration is something the emperor can't even dream of. However, these 4 have arrived at the Jun family even though they probably weren't invited. After all, it seems that they invited themselves. What does this indicate? Isn't the indication rather obvious? Guan family's Lord Guan Donglu's mouth had remained open throughout this entire time. In fact, his smile was so broad that it seemed as if there was a red line drawn between his ears. Every hair on his body had seemingly stood up in excitement. After all, he had never even dreamt of such a grand occasion. In fact, he couldn't even dare to think about it. After all, the entire Guan family had lost their face after that matter about Guan Qinghan's affair had become public. In fact, people had even started to say that the Guan family's moral education wasn't very stern. Even the servants of the Jun family were feeling honored and glorified. They were walking around the aisles with their chests out and heads held high. Even their waists were straightened. "This is our reputation. 3 great masters have arrived to congratulate our 3rd master." Li Yuran was also seated amidst the crowd. However, his face had turned pale when he had watched his master entering the hall. In fact, his heart had filled with agony. "I've suddenly realized that the disparity between me and Jun Moxie has become as massive as the one between heaven and earth. I'm afraid that it's useless to hope that I can catch up on this massive disparity. This guy was busy with cockfighting when I was training and studying with full devotion. This guy was busy enjoying with women when I was planning strategies to improve my financial position. Everyone used to praise me. So, I obviously thought that this guy was nothing in my comparison. So, why haven't I been able to make any headway while this guy is taking his family to the top? Why? How can this even happen? I've suffered so much to follow my dreams and to fulfill my desires. I've endured the kind of loneliness an average person can't even hope to bear. I've even ruined my own love life. However, I've suffered such a massive blow at a time when I thought that I was close to attain success. Have my efforts gone in vain?" Li Yuran's mind was filled with doubts. Have I been mistaken in making such efforts? One doesn't need to rely on hard work to attain success. Can enjoying women and cockfighting also lead a person to success? Who in Tianxiang City has ever seen Jun Moxie working hard? Li Yuran's mind had started losing balance. Li Yuran waved his hand to summon a servant of the Jun family. He then asked, "Why is your third young master Jun Moxie nowhere to be seen? Why is he absent on such a lively occasion?" The servant respectfully replied, "The third young master is busy in entertaining the guests. He's in the backyard with the other guests. He might take some time to come here." With guests in the backyard? What kind of guests is he entertaining in the backyard? Li Yuran's mind began to flood with a myriad of thoughts. What kind of guests? Are they even more important than the four great masters? Can Jun Moxie dare to ignore the emperor of Tianxiang? He can go as far as not meeting the big shots of the imperial court. Moreover, he didn't even show up to greet the great masters. How can you even say this? This question-answer dialogue had happened inadvertently. Li Yuran had only asked this question in a casual manner. He hadn't harbored any malicious intentions. And the servant had also answered the question without thinking about anything. However, this unintentional dialogue had left Li Yuran's mind to wander off. Li Yuran's heart had been rendered at a loss as looked at these jubilant celebrations and the magnificent atmosphere at the Jun family. I paid my respects to the cold-blooded master Lei Wu Bei since he was next to an immortal. I had believed that nothing will be difficult for me as long as I had this great master in my support. It was a flawless strategy. However, it failed and ended in a loss. 8 of my fellow disciples died one after the other. In fact, their lives had such dark endings that nobody ever got to know who murdered them. The fact that I've always looked too highly at my master makes me greatly resentful now. But look at this Jun family instead. Everyone is here to flatter them. They've merely held a trivial adoption ceremony. But 3 great masters have arrived here to congratulate them. This is the disparity. Is it even possible to compare myself with this man? I used to look at my peer with disdain once upon a time. No one could match me. But I have to raise my head to look up at others now. In fact, I'm nothing in comparison. Li Yuran sighed. Then, he again called for the servant. He rewarded the servant with a silver banknote and said, "Please pass on my message to your third young master. Tell him that I would like to speak with him if he has some time." The servant replied respectfully and cautiously, "Young Master Li, please don't worry. This lowly man will certainly bring your words to his master's notice. However, I can't accept a reward for it." He had declined this outrageous reward with an abnormally determined expression. Li Yuran was startled by this. He could have never imagined that an insignificant servant of the Jun family would resist the temptation of such a huge sum of money. Li Yuran had bestowed that reward without much inconvenience. However, it must be known that the amount was 500 in silver. This servant didn't earn more than a dozen banknotes of silver in a year. However, he had refused such a great amount without any hesitation. Is this also a part of this disparity? The Jun family servant hadn't said anything false either. After all, young Master Jun was busy accompanying his noble guests in the backyard at this time. A group of guests at that. Young Master Jun and the Beast Kings of Tianfa were sitting in a circle while enjoying tea in the backyard. Bear King and Tiger King were supposed to embark on their return journey to Tianfa the next day. Therefore, young Master Jun had decided to personally explain several things to them. After all, the mental statuses of these 2 individuals were rather shitty. And it must be mentioned that Mei Shuayan would get frantic and violent in case they neglected the important facts. In fact, even Jun Moxie would be left to cry without tears in that case. Beside, the noble guests who were seated in the hall didn't require his presence. They would inevitably show up with fake smiles. And they would only say made-up words of greetings. However, those two-faced people had daggers hidden in their smiles. That's all. Such work was basically a torture for him. Such fake meetings had always given Jun Moxie a big headache. That's why he had no intentions of going out. There was no need to take too many examples. After all, what kind of etiquette would a young master have to fawn in front of the Emperor of Tianxiang? Even Grandpa Jun and Third Master Jun also felt that it would be better to not let Jun Moxie attend the meeting. Besides, he was from a younger generation. So, he would anyway have difficulty in mixing and communicating with older men. They were happy with this arrangement. He was happy with this arrangement. And they anyway couldn't do much about making everyone else happy. However, the news of the three great masters' arrival was slightly unexpected for Jun Moxie. Feng Wanyun's arrival is very unexpected. However, he is known for being an unpredictable man. But he harbors a good impression of the Jun family. Moreover, third uncle and Feng Wanyun had developed a favorable relation in the past. Therefore, his arrival is somewhat understandable. However, Shi Changxiao and Lei Wu Bei's sudden arrival is thought-provoking. The Jun family has seemingly never had friendly relations with those two. And it doesn't stop at not having friendly relations itself. I've even killed 8 of Lei Wu Bei's 10 disciples. And that's not the only thing I've done. After all, I even ruined his fight with Solitary Falcon. However, these two people have still arrived here. What are they up to? Jun Moxie wrinkled his eyebrows. However, he couldn't explain their arrival no matter how many possibilities he thought of. They had only seen Jun Moxie when these people had gathered for that battle outside Tianfa. Feng Wanyun had friendly relations with the Jun family. However, the same couldn't be said about the other two. Moreover, an event such as Jun Wuyi's adoption of a daughter wasn't a very important matter. And it certainly wasn't the kind of a matter two great masters would personally show up to congratulate him over. This meant that their arrival had a purpose to it. As for what that specific purpose was, Jun Moxie was pondering upon it with a calm face. Mei Shuayan looked at him and asked him, "What is it? Are you skeptical that Shi Changxiao and Lei Wu Bei's arrival might be a problem?" Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 548. Give swords to the Beast Kings. Jun Moxie smiled and said, "There's obviously a problem. I think that they could be here for 3 reasons. First, they might be here regarding the issue with the Silver Blizzard City. Secondly, they might be here to assess the relationship between the Jun family and Tianfa Forest. In fact, they might be interested in learning about your whereabouts. Thirdly, it might not be wrong to say that they are here for the mysterious pills and the alchemist behind them. These problems may seem quite intense at first, but it won't be difficult to deal with. It is possible that my assumptions may be wrong. After all, they might be here for some other purpose entirely. But I believe that they're only here to do some recon. They won't kick up a storm at this time. And that's because their current strengths aren't enough for that. In fact, I believe that Old Falcon is enough to deal with them." Mei Shuayan added with a faint smile, "That's correct. They need to have enough strength even if they are dreaming about kicking up a storm." Jun Moxie laughed heartily. Big Bear and Arath Cracker also began to laugh. This was a world wherein the clenched fist was the strongest argument. This was the unwavering truth. Jun Moxie had decided upon enhancing the strengths of these 4 individuals from Tianfa after much consideration. However, he didn't know why he was constantly somewhat scared in his heart. It was important to know that Jun Moxie and Tianfa were guaranteed to be victorious since Jun Moxie was providing them with a massive amount of miraculous pills. In fact, failure wasn't even an option. However, Jun Moxie had still been feeling as if these 2 beast kings weren't strong enough to make their return trip with assurance of safe travels. He felt it wasn't enough. These 4 beast kings had already taken the 3 magical pills: Heavenly Vitality Pill, Vitality Congregation Pill, and Vitality Linkage Pill. This meant the Jun Moxie didn't have any other suitable medicinal supplement to offer at the moment. It could even be said that additional medicinal supplements wouldn't have been much use to these beasts kings at the moment. After all, using medicinal supplements could never be as dependable as hard work when it came to enhancing strength. These people can only depend on other things now that the extent of my helping abilities have reached their limits. I will provide each one of you with a suitable weapon for self-defense. This would also be a farewell gift for Bear King and Tiger King. Jun Moxie contemplated for a while before he finally spoke up. Mei Shuayan and Green Hunter noticed that Jun Moxie had spoken this after much consideration. And they couldn't help but tremble as a cold shiver ran down their spines. It's important to consider that those 3 pills were nothing short of unnatural. However, Jun Moxie had given them away without any thought. But he was clearly hesitant while talking about giving away these weapons. This indicated that these weapons were clearly superior to those so-called divine weapons. In fact, they were likely to an existence which could only be described as supernatural. One could easily assess that by taking Jun Moxie's Blood of Yellow Flame as an example. In fact, Mei Shuayan had introspected on this subject. However, she had only realized that she wouldn't be able to prevent that weapon from slicing her body into 2 in case the wielder was as strong as her. However, Big Bear and Earthcracker shook their heads in arrogance. Why would we beast kings need these weapons? Moreover, these so-called divine weapons of the human race are very fragile in our eyes. And they're quite difficult to use as well. So, there's no need for this. I'm giving these weapons to you, whether you like it or not. Jun Moxie smiled in a manner that made it seem as if he had already guesses this reaction. He didn't hesitate anymore since he had already made up his mind. He extended his right hand, and a long sword suddenly appeared in his hands out of nowhere. It was sitting motionlessly in its sheath. In fact, it seemed as if this sword had been in that spot for a while. However, no one had been able to make out how this sword had appeared. Even Mei Shuayan didn't have the slightest idea about it, even though her strength was far above everyone else's. The sword had managed to put a slight pressure on Jun Moxie's arms after it had appeared. So, it was evident that it wasn't light-weighted. Clang! Jun Moxie lightly pulled on the hilt of the sword. The sword made a soft sound as it was half unsheathed. The magnificent brilliance of the sword left everyone's eyes to dazzle as their faces were struck with its cold aura. Mei Shuayan and her companions blurted out in unison, "That's a good sword. This is an amazing weapon." Jun Moxie slowly pulled the sword out of its sheath with a faint smile. One could see that the sword's surface was as clear as water. It won't be wrong to say that it appeared as lustrous as gold, and as pleasing to the eyes as silver. This sword was only 1 meter long, the same as any ordinary sword is. But it was wider than an average sword by a margin of about 4 fingers. It had turned out to be a rarely seen broadsword. Jun Moxie turned his wrists, and the long sword slowly turned in a circular fashion. Then, He slowly pointed it downwards. After that, it gradually descended and fell towards the stone table. Screech. A light sound was heard as an unbelievable scene took place in front of the four beast kings. The sword penetrated the stone table in the same manner a red-hot knife goes through a slice of bitter. It penetrated the stone table without a pause, and went sliding through up till its hilt. Mei Shuai-yan couldn't help but breathe a huge mouthful of cold air. I was aware that Jun Moxie's blood of the yellow flame is a rarely seen divine weapon. But I had never thought that he would have another one of such weapons at his disposal. Moreover, he's supposed to be taking out more weapons for us. And I reckon that each one of them must be at par with this one in terms of quality. Wait. Jun Moxie said that he would give one weapon to each of us for individuals. So, I can assume that their quality will be similar. Could it be that this world's process of forging metallic weapons has advanced to such an astonishing degree? What is point being proud of these Xian beast bodies we've been depending on? I haven't come out of Tian Fa for a long time. Is it possible that this has limited my knowledge of the world's developments? However, she figured the truth the moment she thought about it again. After all, the Tian Fa would have been destroyed a long time ago if these weapons were being produced around the world. Mei Shuai-yan couldn't help but rejoice as she realized this. He's the creator of these divine weapons. Thank God it's him. Mei Shuai-yan slightly patted the table's top with her palm. And that sword bounced back from the backward force even though it had been inserted deep into the stone table. The sword swirled in the air before Mei Shuai-yan grasped its glossy hilt. However, she couldn't prevent herself from being startled. This longsword appears like any other sword. The only difference is that this one is slightly wider than the usual. However, this one's weight is around 50 kgs more than the usual ones. Moreover, it's important to note that an ordinary sword weighs about 3 to 4 kgs. In fact, even a sword that has been specially built for a battlefield doesn't surpass the weight of 7 kgs. This sword's weight is unnatural. It is in clear defiance of common sense. Swords need to be agile and lightweight. After all, a person needs to be quick and skillful with them. The weapon's stability and agility may be affected by the weight if it's too heavy, so much so that the wielder's posture, skill, and Xian's strength will go waste. And that would be very disadvantageous. Therefore, I'm afraid that not many people from the human race can be good at using such a heavy sword. However, such a weapon is tailor-made for us beast kings. There's no doubt that this is a great sword. But it is a bit too heavy. I can use it, but I might not be very skilled at it. Mei Shuai-yan gently caressed the sword's blade with her slender finger. And this suddenly gave rise to the sound which is issued and a dragon soars into the sky in spirals. Moreover, this sound continued to echo for a while. This reflected the sword's durability. Mei Shuai-yan had said that she wouldn't be able to use this sword very efficiently. However, she still continued to fiddle with it as if she was reluctant to part with it. Then, she eventually passed it over to Big Bear. Big Bear could barely wait to get his hands on it after he had witnessed its might. It must be said that he didn't need such weapons, but that didn't mean that he wouldn't mind using them. He had only come across ordinary weapons until now. And they had been nothing more than embroidery needles in his eyes. They had been too weak for his use. This is why he had always refused to use such weapons. However, he had taken a liking to this sword as soon as he had seen it. He only realized its weight when he held it hilt in his hands. However, he inwardly exclaimed with extreme joy, "Oh! This is exactly what I had always wished for. Our brother-in-law is amazing. He's indeed worthy of being our brother-in-law. Bear King burst into laughter. He then leapt up and raised the sword above his head. The courtyard suddenly resounded with a clear and loud cry of tigers and dragons. It appeared as if the sky had been lit up with fireworks, and snow had started to flutter over the landscape. The sword's glare was so magnificent that one couldn't even see anyone's silhouette in the vicinity. The other sword Jun Moxie brought out had a similar size and shape. Earthcracker couldn't resist himself, and picked it up. His face also beamed with joy. Such kind of a sword had been nothing more than a false illusion to them in the past. The Beast Kings had the ability to change into human forms. However, it must be mentioned that they had always envied the humans. After all, humans could use weapons, but they could only fight with their physical bodies. That's because the human weapons weren't suitable for their use. Therefore, they had longed to hold such a weapon for many years. And they had suddenly gotten this chance now. How could they not be ecstatic? The quality of the weapon was secondary to them. The mere appropriateness of the weapons had made them extremely valuable in their eyes. Earthcracker leaped up with a whistling sound. And bang 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 sound started to resound as he got into a ping-pong-like sword match with the Bear King. The two swords whistled through the air. They were even giving rise to the faint sounds of wind and thunder. The swords' lights were merging into the sky like snow. A long time passed before the two individuals finally lowered their sword. They then walked over while smiling. However, they were holding their swords in their bosoms for the fear that someone might steal their prized possession. It appeared as if the swords had suddenly turned into their most beloved objects. One look at the scene was enough to determine that they weren't ready to part with the swords. This sword is awesome. Haha. I declare that this one is mine. Big Bear was smiling so ridiculously that his eyes and eyebrows had merged together. However, Earthcracker had lowered his head while Big Bear was making his announcement. In fact, the Tiger King was wiping his sword clean with the front of his jacket's lapel. His movements were extremely cautious and careful. It could be reckoned that he wouldn't have been this attentive even if his wife had given birth to a little tiger. Don't you think you should thank young Master Jun for giving you these swords as a gift? Do you think these priceless treasures can be yours because you merely said so? Why are you two so illogical and stupid? Do you want me to look bad because of your actions? Mei Shuiyan's eyebrows shot up as she shouted in anger. The beautiful Mei thought, I've lost my reputation ever since these two have arrived here. These two are indeed stupid. Mei Shuiyan sighed as she thought. Big sister, is shouting like this a way of thanking someone? What's so wrong about our brother-in-law giving us gifts? After all, we're his wife's younger brothers. So, what's the big deal if he were to give us these two swords as gifts? Isn't that, brother-in-law? Bear King opened his big mouth. He even laughed heartily. One must acknowledge this guy's shamelessness. After all, he was hundreds of years old. However, he had openly hailed a 17 to 18-year-old youngster as the older sister's husband. Moreover, he had even called himself the younger brother-in-law of the said individuals. And it must be noted that he had spoken these words very normally, without any shame or anxiety. Even Earthcracker nodded in agreement with a similar expression on his face. So, it was evident that this guy also felt the same way. The only difference was that he was more conspicuous about it. In fact, it seemed that he knew he shouldn't dare to say it out loud. Mei Shuiyan's face was reddened out of anger. Shut up, you fool. How can you speak so shamelessly? Didn't you learn anything from yesterday? Was that lesson not enough for you? Do you want to spar with me once more now that you've gotten your hands on a new sword? Her eyes emitted two sharp and cold rays of light. It seemed that she was ready to roar into action. The Bear King instantly wilted under the pressure. And he didn't dare to utter another word. In fact, he had suddenly turned into an obedient bear cub. Earthcracker also shrank his neck without daring to utter anything. One could even say that the Tiger King had turned into a tiny and obedient kitten. Jun Moxie was overjoyed in his heart. So, he spoke up with a smile on his face. That is obvious. After all, these are merely two swords. So, there's no need to get so serious about this. Xue Yan, I have to say something to you. You are only going to succeed at scaring them if you keep behaving like that. Besides, they've only spoken the truth. It's reasonable for a brother-in-law to give gifts to his wife's younger brothers. Is it a sin to speak the truth? Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 549. What is brother-in-law trying to do? What truth? This is utter nonsense. And what's about this brother-in-law talk? This is absurd. Mei Shuiyan's face turned a deeper shade of red. She lashed out in a very fierce and stern voice. This is unforgivable. How is it not the truth? Jun Moxie didn't even flinch as he replied. Shuiyan. This is embarrassing for the both of us. I also believe that we should have waited till we were in the bridal room. However, we've seen each other. We've even touched each other. And everyone in family already knows about our domestic affairs. Do you still want things to be more obvious? Mei Shuiyan suddenly got furious. Her fingers trembled as she raised them. Jun Moxie. You are so shameless. Shamelessness is better than having no wife. Jun Moxie happily said. Moreover, it's not limited to the two of them alone. I also have swords for you and Green Hunter. It must have been difficult for you to hold their swords. So, I've made a customized sword for you. Green Hunter's eyes glittered when she heard this, and she couldn't prevent herself from biting her lips. However, she then glanced at Mei Shuiyan's expressions, and didn't dare to speak anything. You have swords for us as well? Mei Shuiyan stretched the tone of her voice. This guy finally changed the subject. She then said in a harsh manner, why haven't taken them out yet? You only need to command. Jun Moxie chanted this sentence as he twisted his buttocks. He then extended his right hand and shouted, to make it happen. Two more swords appeared in his hands with a brushing sound. They had again appeared out of nowhere. However, these two swords were much more slender and smaller than the first two swords. These swords were far more graceful in their appearance as well. In fact, one look was enough to tell that they had been crafted for women. It could be said that Mei Shuiyan had summoned the entirety of her mental strength and spiritual sense to perceive Jun Moxie's movements this time. In fact, she hadn't shown any lacks in her efforts. But she still couldn't discover how he had managed to produce these two swords in the open. They had still appeared out of the thin air. Mei Shuiyan was astonished by this. Heaven knows how incomprehensible this mysterious young man's skills are. Jun Moxie first took out one of those swords and handed it over to Green Hunter. Green Hunter couldn't prevent herself from exclaiming out loud with happiness when she held the sword. She loved it so much that she couldn't put it down. It was evident that she was at least as happy as the Bear King and the Tiger King. Green Hunter looked at the flickering golden body of her sword. It seemed as if the entire sword was made of gold. Moreover, it was crafted marvelously. It turned out to be a rarely seen soft sword. Its blade was as agile as a snake. It could twist with natural fluency. It could shake and sway in a gentle manner. And there was an unfathomable flicker to its radiance. The tip of the sword was forked. In fact, it looked like a viper's tongue. Moreover, it was emitting hidden cold rays. The sword could split, cut, heal, stab, twist, sway, and wave. It had many other properties that other swords didn't. And it was a tailor-made for the Snake King. Only the Snake King had capability to bring out the innate qualities of this sword. Only she could maximize its power. It could be said that this was Jun Moxie's most meticulous creation among these four swords. It was tailor-made for the Snake King. However, he had spent thousands of kgs of gold to craft this soft golden sword's body. Snake King's heart filled with joy, and she looked at Jun Moxie with an affectionate expression in her eyes. She was impatient, and couldn't wait to test her sword. Therefore, she wrapped it around her wrist at first. Then, she wrapped it around her slender waist. It seemed as if the sword had a mind of its own. It was transforming into different forms in the hands of the Snake King. Moreover, there was nothing but pure fluency in its transformations from the tip to the hilt. In fact, it appeared as if it was a living and intelligent snake. The more the Snake King looked at the sword, the more delighted she got. The more she played with it, the more she was reluctant to put it down. She joyfully squinted her big eyes as she brought the soft sword to her face. It was evident that she cherished it beyond any known bounds. Jun Moxie laughed out loud as he grabbed the sword's sheath. And the sword's sheath also bent and turned into a rounded shape. There was a bayonet on one end. And it could be connected to the hilt of the sword. It was a belt of sorts. It turned out that Jun Moxie had also worked very hard on the sword's sheath. It was evident that Jun Moxie's craftsmanship was unusually ingenious and exquisite. Jun Moxie smiled and said, "I've named this sword as Snake King Sword. You can wrap it around your waist when you are not using it. It is likely to confuse any person with ease. This sword will be very convenient to use once it's out. Moreover, it's likely to deliver the best results when it catches the opponent off guard. Green Hunter, you must think of ways to get this sword out from your waist at the quickest possible speed. I personally feel that this will be a great magical weapon to defeat your enemy." The Snake King's face had reddened from overexcitement. She kept nodding as she grabbed the sheath to examine it. Mei Shuayan sighed as she thought, "I'm beginning to owe Jun Moxie an increasing number of favors. First, he gave us several rare pills. And he has given us 4 unique and divine swords today." She looked at the Bear King, Tiger King, and Snake King. Each of the 3 Beast Kings was holding a sword with a foolish smile on their faces. They were constantly experimenting with their weapons, and they appeared very enthusiastic and delighted. It was impossible for them to not owe him. I believe that even the 3 Holy Lands won't be able to come up with one such sword. But Jun Moxie had 4 of them. This kind of an upstart was huge. Mei Shuayan was a very experienced and knowledgeable individual. But she still couldn't prevent herself from being stunned by this youngster. Forget about anything else, he must have more of such weapons. And there are other Beast Kings in the Tian Fa forest. However, it is impossible for a person of Jun Moxie's nature to give these presents to only the Bear King, Tiger King, and the Snake King, and ignore the other Beast Kings. It is already a huge favor to accept these 4 swords from him, but it will be good to have more. Mei Shuayan couldn't prevent her charming face from blushing as this thought crossed her mind. What's happening to me? Have I gotten addicted to taking cheap advantages of people? It's a sin. How could she not be aware of Jun Moxie's intentions and nature? This guy would never allow himself to suffer a loss. He would always ask his debtor to pay up once he had owed the said individual enough. And Jun Moxie's shamelessness had led Mei Shuiyan to believe that he could undoubtedly do such a lowly thing. Moreover, she believed that he could do this with so much confidence and righteousness that even the color of his face wouldn't change. Nor would his heart palpitate in the process. This guy has started becoming more and more daring around me of late. So, I'm afraid that I would have to bear the brunt if he puts any conditions forward. What would I do in that case? Would I be able to refuse him in case he asks me to devote myself to him? Moreover, this guy already has many beautiful women at his side. Is it possible that the great lord of Tianfa Forest would have to become his concubine? Wouldn't he only following on to his words? You ought to follow me, little thing. I will rub your buttocks every day. Mei Shuiyan's face started to blush as this thought crossed her mind. In fact, her face blushed so hard that it seemed as if it had started to burn. She then shot a glimpse of hatred towards Jun Moxie. But it only left her heart flustered. And that's because she could sense that she didn't find this matter as disgusting anymore. What's happened to me? This is absurd. However, this one glance of hers had left Jun Moxie very flustered. Therefore, he quickly introspected. I had said a few words a moment. But they shouldn't have offended her so much. Moreover, I gifted them 4 divine weapons in one go. So, why did this woman lose her temper? Did this young master make a mistake by giving her these gifts? Did I get kicked while trying to flatter her? But that doesn't seem to be the case. How could Jun Moxie know that Mei Shuiyan's thoughts had taken such a long leap? In fact, she had already started thinking about the wedding night. Mei Shuiyan forcefully focused herself again, and raised her white hand. Jun Moxie only felt as if a breeze had passed him. However, the only remaining sword in his hand had already been taken. Mei Shuiyan was sitting quietly on the stone bench by the time he looked towards her. She had already started to fiddle with the slender sword. Only one of the 4 swords is left. So, I presume that this one is for me. Mei Shui was still blushing. But she had forcefully put on a carefree look on her face. She had used a matter-of-fact tone, but it hadn't sounded as authentic. In fact, her tone was so abnormal that even supermorons like Bear King and Tiger King had also noticed it. The 2 beast kings looked at each other and winked. However, they had a tacit understanding between themselves. So, they continued to fiddle with their divine swords with blank expressions on their faces. However, they had erected their ears. Of course, who besides Shuiyan deserves to use this divine sword? Jun Moxie flashed a humble smile as he sent out words of loud and clear flattery. Hey! Stop blabbering! Mei Shuiyan snorted. Her words had seemed like a severe warning. However, Bear King and Tiger King winked at each other. Hee. Elder sister is delighted. Listen to her words. Doesn't it sound like a flirtatious banter? It must be said that Mei Shuiyan's sword was the best among the 4. It was the small and exquisite in style. The sword's blade was slender but sharp, and the hilt had an amazing grip. The sword's body was smooth and flawless. The tip of its edge seemed to be an embodiment of a monarch's glory. Mei Shuiyan was someone who stood at the apex of the world. However, even she had no option but to admire Jun Moxie's exquisite craftsmanship. The sword given to me complements my nature. The pure white color of the sword's blade seems like the white gowns I wear every day. It seems like a perfect pair. Moreover, the sword seems to be of the highest quality. You've done a very thoughtful job. Mei Shuiyan's voice was faintly authentic. However, she had used the kind of words which were used by the elders whilst praising the younger generation. There's no need to thank me, Shuiyan. I won't hesitate to climb burning mountains made of blades for you. I can take a hail of arrows for you. I can face death with equanimity for your sake. My heart can shed bright blood for you every day of every month. I can die hundreds of times without having any regret. I'm ready to risk my life. Even 100 million deaths are worth it. Jun Moxie shook his head and expressed his emotions. Ach! Bear King and Tiger King ran away with expressions that made it seem as if they would throw up. It turned out that they wanted to get as far away from this shameless man as possible. However, they had also done this in order to give this guy some time and space with their elder sister. Mei Shuiyan snorted, and her face turned red. But she pretended as if she hadn't heard him. Instead, she merely continued to admire the sword she held in her hands. This guy would start a dyeing workshop if you give him some colors. He would try to illuminate the entire earth if you give him some sunshine. However, he will do his weird things and move on if you flatly ignore him. The three beast kings were fiddling with their swords. But all of them were doing so absent-mindedly. Instead, their eyes were always glancing sideways to look at the two people. In fact, Bear King and Tiger King were even gossiping with their expressions. Old Ninth, what do you think will happen next? Bear King winked enthusiastically. I think they're bound to kiss. Earthcracker's expressions resembled a love guru. He even seemed to be pondering in a philosophical manner. I don't see it. Big Bear shook his head in disapproval. He feigned the expression of an experienced man as he said, my experience suggests that they should hug tightly. The kind of hug where one is unable to breathe. How is that possible? Can't you see that brother-in-law is licking his lips? This is obviously the prelude to a kiss. I can see it coming. Earthcracker bickered in ridicule. He then stuck out his tongue and licked his lips. Then, a strange sound was heard as he swallowed his saliva. Silly tiger. Can't you see that brother-in-law is about to open his arms wide? This is clearly a hugging position. You don't understand. So, don't talk nonsense. Don't make me laugh. Bear King's eyes showed harsh expressions as his belly straightened up. He seemed to be feigning the mannerism of an expert lecturer. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 550. Threatens while confronting the heroes of the entire world. Stupid. How can you be so stupid? How can one kiss without hugging first? Stop pretending to understand things when you don't. There's nothing wrong in not having knowledge. However, not having knowledge and pretending to be a knowledgeable man is an unforgivable mistake. Big Bear was scolding Tiger King as if the latter had failed to live up to his expectations. Shut up both you stupid beasts, a lowered but seemingly murderous voice was heard at this time. Both the beast kings were left stunned when they heard this threatening voice. They then turned their head to look, and saw the Snake King's ashen expressions. A fierce light was flickering in her eyes as she looked at them. The Snake King's sword was swaying in her hands. However, it seemed like a highly poisonous viper was about to bite its prey. The Tiger King and the Bear King felt the same way at this time. The Snake King will draw her sword and kill us if we say another word. They couldn't help but look at each other in dismay. They stood motionless while staring blankly. What's going on? Both the Beast Kings were baffled. How did Snake King's temper suddenly become so violent? Both of them were becoming increasingly unclear of this. It seemed that the Snake King's temper had been worsening ever since she had arrived in Tianxiang. In fact, it had now reached a point where it could detonate like a barrel of gunpowder. Is it because she is with the elder sister? Is she being influenced by elder sister? But you don't have the elder sister's strength. So, how could you deal with us? Both the Beast Kings rolled their eyes in a silent curse. She's scolding the wise and far-sighted Bear King and Tiger King. She's got some courage. However, these three Beast Kings were surprised to see that the two individuals hadn't made any movements. Instead, they were sitting calmly. Mei Shuayan was fiddling with her sword with her head lowered. And Jun Moxie was looking on with a smile on his face. Neither of them was moving. In fact, they looked like two sculptures that were letting the wind quietly pass past them. The breeze blew, and Mei Shuayan's robes and hair fluttered. The wind blew, and the sleeves of Jun Moxie's robes fluttered as his eyes remained fixated. Both of them were sitting like this. In fact, the scene looked as aesthetical as a painting. Moreover, it seemed like they could sit there till they got old. This kind of tranquility, leisure, and warmth left even the insensitive Big Bear and Earthcracker stunned. Even the angry Green Hunter also looked stupefied. They looked at this scene in silence, and their hearts filled with warmth and emotions. The sound of rapid footsteps came at this moment. Someone was rushing towards them. A servant pushed open the courtyard's doors and said, "Young master, the ceremony is about to begin. The old lord and third master have asked you to come at once. They've said that you mustn't miss this moment." This servant's voice hadn't even faded when he saw that three pairs of eyes were wickedly shooting flames at him. He suddenly got goosebumps over his entire body. He couldn't help but feel extremely terrified. In fact, he felt as if he was about to fall to the ground. How could this insignificant servant resist the anger of three Beast Kings? They hadn't released the entirety of their strength. Nor had they intended to kill him. But he still couldn't bear it. "I know. I will be there in a minute," Jun Moxie replied in a clear voice. The servant felt his entire body relax when he heard Jun Moxie's voice. He couldn't help but sigh. In fact, he nearly started to pant. It must be said that he had broken into cold sweat in a moment. In fact, even his undergarments had soaked in sweat by now. "Shuayan, you make arrangements so that they can set on their journey tomorrow. Make special notes of the things they mustn't forget. I will send some people to deliver the things they've bought to the Tianfa forest. These two must travel light on this journey. I will come to meet them before they leave. But I leave this matter to you now." Jun Moxie looked at Mei Shuayan as he said in a gentle tone. Mei Shuayan still didn't raise her head. She mere replied in a gentle manner, "You be at ease." Both these Beast Kings have had their strength increased by 50 years. Their speed has also increased by 3 times. Moreover, the speed of their cultivation's progress has also become 3 times faster. And these divine weapons can double their strength. So, these two don't even deserve to go back if they still can't make it on their own now. Jun Moxie laughed out loud. Then, he turned around and left. He left Mei Shuayan behind to rebuke the two Beast Kings. And he also ignored the resentful looks those two Beast Kings shot towards his back. "Has anyone asked to see me?" Jun Moxie asked the servant as he lightly walked ahead. "Yes. The young master is right. There's indeed a table in the inner hall where someone wishes to talk to the young master. The emperor has also mentioned that he'd like to meet you. Furthermore, young master Li Yuran has also asked if you have the time to talk to him. The servant respectfully reported. Li Yuran wants to talk to me? Did he mention what he wanted to talk about? Jun Moxie slightly frowned. Why would this guy wish to talk to me at this time? What does he want? However, Jun Moxie didn't pay any attention to the other two people the servant had mentioned. It wasn't that Jun Moxie was feeling too highly about himself. It was just that he clearly knew that there was no scope of having a talk with those two individuals. After all, an enemy is an enemy. Moreover, there was no possibility of resolving these issues. It must be mentioned that they weren't his public enemies at the moment. But that was likely to be the case in the future. Jun Moxie had infinite confidence in his instincts. Therefore, he simply couldn't afford to meet the emperor of Tianxiang. In fact, it could be said that Jun Moxie was afraid to meet him. He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to control his temper in case he met that old bastard. He feared that would draw a knife and cut the emperor's head. And it needn't be mentioned that such an act would cause a sensation. Jun Moxie entered the hall and saw that the entire place was packed with people. Grandfather Jun and Jun Wuyi were seated in the front seats. Guan Qinghan was standing in the front of these two men. She was dressed in beautiful attire. Guan Donglu was standing behind his daughter with a merry smile on his face. The guests were seated in the various rows that followed. Shi Changxiao and other great masters were seated in the very front. Song Shang, the master of ceremonies, also seemed prepared. It must be mentioned that it wasn't a trivial matter for a Sky Xian expert to be acting as the master of ceremonies. Everything was already prepared. They were only waiting for young Master Jun to show up. Song Shang breathed a sigh of relief when he saw Jun Moxie enter the hall. So, he took out a silk scroll from his sleeves. He then unfolded it in a manner that made it seem as if it was a sacred decree. Then, he read it out aloud. Today is an auspicious day. The guests have gathered. And this is a matter of supreme glory for the Jun family. The arrival of the four great masters and Tianxiang's emperor has brought glory to our Jun family. I'm indebted to old Lord Jun for entrusting me with the responsibility of the master of ceremonies today. I'm young, and I have little knowledge. I request the honorable guests to forgive this Song Shang in case he has made any mistakes today. I beseech that you don't blame my Jun family for this. The audience broke into words of consolation as these words resounded. However, the eyes of most people had turned towards Tianxiang's Emperor Yang Huayu. This ceremonial speech had been personally written and edited by Jun Moxie. Song Shang had only added the words, "For great master," a moment ago. However, other parts of the speech had remained the same. And the same stood true for the phrase, "arrival of Tianxiang's emperor." It must be mentioned that he hadn't said, "arrival of the heavenly emperor." This had made it seem as if he had declared that Jun family was no longer a subordinate of the Tianxiang Empire. How was it possible for the people present in the hall to not notice this part? Therefore, everyone's complexion had turned somewhat strange at this moment. The emperor's expressions changed when he heard this part of the speech. However, it quickly reverted to normal. He then let out a faint smile, and his expressions didn't fluctuate after that. He even looked at everyone with a smile. It seemed that he hadn't understood the meaning of this, and was still calm and composed. It must be said that such a formidable person deserved to be called the talent of his generation. After all, even the color of his face hadn't changed. Such an ability to remain calm was worthy of admiration. Jun Moxie's eyes slightly contracted. This guy thinks profoundly. He's genuinely far better than others. After all, he's still very composed. It seems that it will be extremely difficult to get the truth out from his mouth. Meanwhile, Song Shang had already started to carry out his duties. This is an auspicious day. A happy occasion has arrived at the door of this family. The Jun family's third master Jun Wuyi has officially adopted the Guan family's daughter Guan Qinghan. Henceforth, she will be like his child. And the world will treat them like father and daughter. It wasn't mentioned that she was originally a woman of the Jun family. Instead, Song Shang had said, daughter of the Guan family. These words had made it clear that Guan Qinghan's former status had been erased and turned into a mere memory. Song Shang eventually came to the point after a voluminous speech. And Guan Qinghan knelt as per his instructions. She kowtowed 9 times and stood up. However, she had burst into tears by the time she got up to her feet. Jun Wuyi smiled and supported her with his hands. Then, he said some warm words of consolation. He then took out a shiny pearl necklace and presented it as the first gift from a foster father to his adopted daughter. Everyone applauded and congratulated them as this happened. Guan Qinghan has become the Jun family's daughter from now on. She will get to start her life afresh. She is allowed to choose a virtuous man of her independent liking. And no one is allowed to interfere. The Jun family will see it as an irreconcilable enmity in case someone dares to offend her. We won't hesitate to take out our swords. And we will fight to the end. Guan Qinghan's previous identity was somewhat dubious for reasons known to everyone. But she's the Jun family's adopted daughter now. Therefore, every misconception from the past stands annihilated. They've been scattered in the wind, and no one is allowed to mention it any longer. Jun family officially declares that anyone who dares to offend her in the future will be considered an archenemy of the entire Jun family. Moreover, the Jun family vows to use their entire strength to kill any such individual. They had mentioned about killing anyone in 2 consecutive phrases. And they had done so with a cold and murderous manner. In fact, the element of threat had been indicated in the manner of speech very clearly. Jun Moxie's style has always been strong and stern. They were standing in front of every influential family in the country. The imperial family and various great Xian families of the continent were present as well. Even the 4 great masters were in attendance. However, Song Shang had outrageously read out this iron-blooded declaration of Jun Moxie's. Jun Moxie had intentionally issued a threat to everyone in front of these heroes of the world. Jun Moxie stood quietly in the crowd. His eyes were gleaming with a cold light. And his gaze was filling the atmosphere with a cold electric current. In fact, his eyes were filled with cruelty. The entire scene had fallen into silence. The Jun family's declaration was extremely arrogant. However, no one thought that it was inappropriate. Even the 4 great masters were no exception to this. After all, Jun family possessed enough power to make such a declaration. They weren't afraid of anyone. The clenched fist was the strongest argument in this world. The strength of one's fist decided the weight of their argument. They had several Sky Xian experts and countless Earth Xian fighters on their side. The Jun family's father and son were high-level Spirit Xian experts. Moreover, they had Great Master Solitary Falcon to keep a watch. Furthermore, Jun Moxie's mysterious master could deter any force of this world. And they even had some connections with the Tian Fa forest. Plus, Every influential family had already assessed that Feng Wanyun was clearly inclined toward supporting the Jun family. Who in the entire mainland could dare to look directly into the eyes of such a force? The ceremony stands completed. Song Shang shouted and clapped his hands. Then, he put the silk scroll away, and courteously bowed to the guests. Suddenly, there was a thunderous applause in the hall. Guan Qinghan's face was overflowing with tears. It was obvious that her heart had been overwhelmed by emotions. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. This story will be continued to chapter 551. For those of you who are not subscribed yet, please subscribe. The interesting and best stories will be updated. See you again in the next episode.